under the lens. You see, so close observation, anything that which is a miss is always banned. When we come to particularly Ayurvedic drug, what is Ayurvedic drug? Ayurvedic drug, as from our perspective that you can see, there are two of them, as which is called as Kaushaushadha, which is herbal medicine, and Rasaushadha, herbo mineral / metallic medicine. And amongst them you have what is known as Ekamulika, and then yoga of the herbal, as well as Ekarasa or Ekaloha to yoga, as well, that you find we have today in Ayurveda. Drug definition per se. This is only Ayurveda drug, which is away from Ayurvedic proprietary medicine, which is defined at 3HI. This is 3A. So what popularly people call it as Ayurvedic classical medicine. Okay. But what is herbal medicine? Everyone understands that herbal medicine is only that contains herbs. No doubt. Of course, as the name says. The WHO defines that, yes, of course, herb materials, herbal preparations, and finished herbal products are all herbal medicine. But there is also a clause which says that in some countries, herbal medicines may contain, by tradition, like Ayurveda, inorganic active ingredients which are not of plant origin. That is very important. So, herbo minerals are not called as. So, if you look, I have shown you the WHO is talking about herbal medicine, herbal medicine, herbal medicine. Herbal medicine also includes Rasaushadhis, which also includes the not of the plant origin. But however, please note this one, this is WHO definition. But whereas EU has a very specific thing that no, herbal medicinal product means exclusively herbs. No more metals, minerals, etc. cannot be accepted. That's why EU has gone beyond leaps and bounds for its stringent regulatory concerns. However, if you look the Ayurveda product is also known as / natural product. The very concept of Ayurveda, the objective of Ayurveda is two, as you know, Swasthasya Swastharakshanam, Vikara Prashamanam. And if you want to translate that, what it is exactly is that which Swasthasya Swastharakshanam is wellness protection, and the other one is illness prevention, illness alleviation. These two have actually drawn a line today, what we see in the whole world as supplements and medicines on either side. Okay. Supplements are also known by different connotations that you have to mind this one. Dietary supplements, functional food, health food, natural health products, food supplement, novel food. These are the terminologies used by the regulations around the world. So all means the same. That is supplements. Whereas in case of medicine that you have, as you know, herbal medicine, WHO says herbo mineral is also herbal medicine, then complementary, alternative and traditional medicine. Classification today, class of them called as Belfrit list in EU, which started in 2012, which is very stringent, that you find even a food which is called here in Ayurveda in India may not be listed there, because that otherwise it becomes a novel food. It was not known to. But however, the regulations for all these medicines is three criteria: quality, efficacy and safety, that you have to mind always. But in the EU, EMEA, EMA, whatever you call it as, European Medicine Agencies controls all of them. But fortunately, they have a wider classification of what is called as the centralized procedure. There is a decentralized procedure, then mutual recognition procedure, and a national registration. There are different approaches to that. One has to go into the details of that. For the want of time, I am not able to. But this is very important for all of us to note. Even if it is a traditional one, right side corner you can see the bottom, traditional. You need every one of them, GSCP, GMP, quality control. Then for safety and efficacy, you have a little bit of allowance that you can use, traditional use and bibliographic references if you want to have. But however, that pharmacovigilance is very, very important across to all of them for registration. Otherwise, the other things which are very well known. But however, the procedure is widely recognized that you have to bring CTD, Common Technical Document. And the Common Technical Document that governs is for quality, for herbal substance, herbal preparation and drug product, all the three of the raw materials, then preparation, Panchavida Kashaya Kalpana or Kashaya Kalpana as you say, Dravya, Kashaya Kalpana and Yoga. All of them are covered under the module called as quality, and the other details are there, which I am not going to the details. But the module 4 is non-clinical, wherein pharmacology, pharmacokinetics and toxicology is most widely expected, because that decides the safety of that. And then non-clinical studies, etc. And most important finally is the human safety and human efficacy, the clinical studies. These are the very important ones. And if you look, even going into the future, The conventional method, what we see in the bottom, the green, conventional toxicology, monograph, and conventional analytics. Today, what we are moving into, what is known as the new age technologies together with the DNA barcoding. Now, we were the first, Himalaya was the first in this region to bring in DNA barcoding, and we have contributed nearly to 75 herbs DNA code to the world database in Canada and Europe. Then you have what is known as qualified presumption of safety is a very good approach there. And then omics and blockchain is a new one that actually helps us to identify the source of the raw materials completely. And friends, as you know very well, this drug is a very important armamentarium for the physician and the 4 important factors for success of the treatment. Chikitsa Chatushpada, as you call it as, very important for its quality. And as you know, Charaka has described all these aspects of regulatory requirement, GSCP, GCP, GMP and GLP, all of them when he said Bahuta, Tatra Yogyatvam, Aneka Vidakalpana, Sampacheti, nothing but all this. If he has emphasized thousands of years ago, whenever he has written that, or his Agrimecha or whatever you call it as, and today and tomorrow is what the whole world, the regulators are asking for, and that is why it is said Ayurveda has no limitation. Ayurveda is not ancient, Ayurveda is contemporary, Ayurveda is futuristic. Thank you so much for your.
Thank you very much, sir. You have spoken about international regulatory affairs and compliances, highlighted the difference between herbal drugs, supplements and nutraceuticals, the difference between approach of WHO and European Union in terms of herbal medicine and herbominerals. Thank you very much, sir. We have our next speaker, Dr. Pradeep Dua. Dr. Pradeep Dua is a postgraduate in Ayurveda, as well as he has got a lot of other qualifications whichever post he has held in the ministry as well as ICMR, he justified to the post like having additional qualifications. He has numerous publications to his credit, as well as he has visited various countries representing India, including BIMSTEC countries and BRICS. Dr. Pradeep Dua, he will be presenting on regulatory affairs. Dr. Dua, please.
Thank you so much. A very good morning and my namaskar to Honorable Secretary Sir, respected teachers and students of Ayurveda here. So it's my august privilege to deliver on the topic related to standards in Ayush systems, and I would be speaking on the national perspective and the international efforts that we have started taking in the field of standardization in Ayush systems. So what we see here is that beautifully marked parking spaces, but because one line is not properly marked, that leads to chaotic and that leads to all sorts of problems for everyone. So this is lack of standardization. Here we see that the gentleman is not able to enter inside the lift because there is a mismatch between the wheelchair and the lift door. So this is lack of standardization, and this is what lack of standardization leads to in any sector, and Ayush sector or Ayurveda sector is also not spared from that. So what exactly is a standard? A standard is a document which is established by consensus. So this is the most important thing, that standard is not something like regulation which is enforced, which everybody is compelled to follow. Rather, standard is something voluntary. You may follow it, you may not follow it, but if you follow it, it is for everybody's benefit. Like for example, this drinking water that we have with us, this has Indian standard ISI 14543. So on every bottle of drinking water that we have in our country, this has to comply to this Indian standard. So there are voluntary standards and there are mandatory standards also. So a standard is developed by consensus. This is the most important thing. And standards are all around us. Like for example, this A4 size paper, you purchase it from any part of the country or rather from any country, A4 size paper will remain A4. The dimensions will be like that only. So this is what is standard. And be it, the size of clothing that we wear, be it the quality of other products, the electronics or whatever we use in our daily life, they're all governed by standards. That is why, the sockets and the plugs that we see. So one socket will fit in all sorts of plugs. So this is standardization only. Now, what is the need for standards? Well, standards facilitate international trade. This is the bottom line for standardization. if we are able to comply to national standards and harmonize with the international standards, the international trade gets a fillip. So this is the most important thing. And they bring benefits to the business as well as they ensure the safety and quality of the products for the consumer. So who develops the standards? Well, any organization who develops the standards is called an STO, that is Standard Development Organization. But from the national perspective, every country, every UN member state has a national standards body. Like for example, in our country, the Bureau of Indian Standards has been designated as the national standards body to formulate standards for all consumer goods. So similarly, at the international level, we have three major standard development bodies like ISO, IEC, and ITU. So do the standards exist in Ayush systems? Yes, of course. We do have regulatory standards in Ayush systems. Like for example, in the field of education, we have minimum standard regulations. Like in the field of drugs, we have the pharmacopoeias and formularies available. In the field of hospitals also, now we have NABH accreditation and standardization available for Ayush hospitals and Ayush clinics. So standards do exist. But at the same time, as the national standards or the Indian standards and as international standards, well, we have recently embarked upon our journey. So national standards body, as I said, is the Bureau of Indian Standards. It was earlier known as ISI, Indian Standards Institution, and by the Act of BIS Act 1986, it is granted the status of national standards body. So how we formulate Indian standards in BIS? Well, again, as I said, it is formulated by consensus. The new work item is proposed and all the stakeholders, including manufacturers, regulators, innovators, and academicians, everybody is involved to formulate a standard. It's a long process, a democratic process, so that all the stakeholders can participate, can benefit, and can utilize the standard. So there are different stages of standard development: initial new work item proposal, then preliminary draft, wide circulation draft, and then only a standard is published. It takes nearly 9 months to 2 years to publish one Indian standard at a regular pace. So at the level of Bureau of Indian Standards, we have recently started formulating standards for Ayush related systems also. BIS was formulated in the year 1946, but in 75 years this effort was, somewhere missing. So recently, with the initiative of, Ministry of Ayush, this effort has been started in the Bureau of Indian Standards, and we have been able to formulate Ayush standards in 4 different departments in the Bureau of Indian Standards. The Food and Agriculture Department regarding herbs, the Service Sector Department regarding service sector in Ayush, including the medical value tourism, and the Medical Equipment and Hospital Planning Department, where we are working on informatics related aspects of Ayush systems. And very recently, I am happy to share that very recently, a separate department for Ayush standardization has been created in the Bureau of Indian Standards, and we are fortunate that Secretary Sir has kindly agreed to be the chairperson of the Division Council of this department. So as of now, we have 7 published Indian standards, 6 dealing with the terminology and 1 dealing with yoga mat. It's an interesting thing that we have been using yoga mat since centuries, and we have been celebrating International Day of Yoga, but somewhere the standards of yoga mat from the Indian perspective were missing. And with the efforts of BIS and Ministry of Ayush, we have been able to formulate the standards for the cotton yoga mat. So let us hope that when we do yoga, we are able to use these cotton yoga mats which are based on Indian standards. So these are the 7 Indian standards which we have been published. Most of them deal with terminology as of now. There are 20 Indian standards related to different herbs which are under publication. Similarly, 31 standards, they are again in the different stages of publication, and another 33 standards are in the pipeline. So by the end of this year, we hope that we would be having nearly 100 published standards which are as Indian standards. So standards making is a very intricate process. As you see at the international level, there are several agencies, several organizations which are involved in the formulation of international standards. The major of them are the ISO, that is International Organization for Standardization, International Electrotechnical Commission, and the International Telecommunication Union. So we are more concerned with ISO because that deals with the consumer products related to herbs also. So ISO has as of now 165 member countries, and any standard formulated by ISO is automatically available to all these 165 countries, and that definitely will facilitate international trade if we are able to jump into this wagon and we are able to have standards for Ayurveda also. So ISO is governed by several, organizations, several agencies. They participate and make standards in ISO. It is not only one country which will propose and which will formulate. It is by consensus of all these countries. Again, several tier-based structure exists in ISO. I would like to focus your attention on the technical committees. As of now in ISO, we have nearly 350 technical committees, and we are in the process of, sending a proposal for establishment of an Ayush-related technical committee in ISO also. So that would be a very big, platform for us to formulate international standards. As of now, we are able to mark our way in the ISO meetings, and we have been able to propose 3 proposals related to Ayush. One is ISO DTR 4421, which deals with health informatics related aspects of, introduction to Ayurveda informatics. There is another document, ISO AWI TS 6204. So this deals with the standardization of decoction from the health informatics perspective. Like for example, during COVID times, we all heard about Ayush Kwath. So how a Kwath is to be prepared and how software or an algorithm for preparation of a Kwath is to be made. So that is what we have tried to attempt in this document. And another new work item proposal that we have recently submitted to ISO is regarding assessment of Prakriti. This is all from health informatics perspective. And we are able to, enter into the WG11 of ISO TC 215, which deals with personalized digital health. So we would be speaking on Prakriti also in this forum. So what I mean to say that, till the time we are able to have a dedicated committee for Ayush systems in the ISO, we are able to propose certain proposals and subjects in the ISO which have already been accepted from ISO for formulation of Indian standards, for the formulation of international standards. So this is all. I just wanted to kindle the interest of the students present here that this is another interesting area where we need to work, and this is something which is going to give boost to international trade and recognition and accreditation to Ayush systems. I thank the organizers for giving this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Pradeep Dua. You are well in time. Thank you very much. We are all aware of ISO standards and Bureau of Indian Standards and all. What are the steps behind it? What are the efforts they are putting behind it? It is not known. The lack of standards are leading to a very big difficulty in systemic reviews in research too. It is very happy to note that you are going ahead with the standardization of Prakriti format and such things. Thank you very much, sir. Our next presenter or our next speaker is Dr. Vaidya G.G. Gangadharan. Dr. G.G. Gangadharan, he had this Ayurveda education in a prestigious Coimbatore Ayurveda college, having 7.5 years of Gurukula system education, and followed by he has a master's in management degree from McGill University, Canada. In addition to that, he has a PhD from Tilak Ayurveda Vidyapit, Pune, and having illustrious administrative experience starting with the Ayurveda Pharmacy Coimbatore to Ramaya Indic Center, Bangalore, and he has been awarded with the Vaidyaraj Data Shastri Memorial Award. He has been awarded with Yastam's Mathodas Parekh Award. He has been awarded with Indic Academy Award for Grateful to Gurus, and he has authored one book, The True Way to Restore Your Health and Happiness, through Penguin India Limited. I welcome Dr. G.G. Gangadharan for his presentation.
My dear friends, colleagues, and well-wishers of Ayurveda, I am extremely happy to be with you. As an active participant and organizer since the inception of World Ayurveda Congress in 2000. Today's my talk is based mainly my experience in the area of clinical practice and how integrative approach to the changing scenario can help us to take Ayurveda to the next century and beyond. I have divided into 3 aspects. I will try to finish the 3 aspects in 3 minutes each. Probably before the chit comes to me, I will try to finish. The first area is the Indian context. Indian context, as you know, that the understanding of health and disease has evolved over thousands of years. The traditional Indian system is probably the longest and the oldest written traditions in the world. Most of the great civilization which has gone to oblivion or has become the specimens in the museums has had this kind of traditions, but not in the continuous stream. But today in India, Ayurveda and yoga has an enduring experience and standing as a hope for the next generation and beyond. That is the Indian context. We have got a vibrant tradition which is catering to the needs of the contemporary society and becoming a hope for the next generation to come and the people who are working in the field of health and promotion of health and healing of diseases. So just let us see the evolution of Ayurveda in this country and how as it stands today. The evolution of Ayurveda, the first instance of Ayurveda we have seen in that text of Ayurveda where around 10 plants are explained in different conditions of diseases, which has evolved into different Samhita texts in BC and beyond through Sutra Samhita and Charaka Samhita kind of classical texts. It has evolved to further in 6th AD through Vagbhada's very creative work on Ayurveda, which consolidated the earlier works in a very readable and in a very contemporary mode. And you can see there is evolution every years, and it has come to 8th century. We have seen Madhav Nidhana, that then we have seen Shargadhara Samhita, which is first time it explained about the uses of different substances, including cannabis and other materials. And we have seen Ayurveda got its, and we have seen Bhava Prakasha, which speaks about opium and camphor first time. Then we have seen in the commercial production of Ayurvedic medicine by great stalwarts of Ayurveda, Vaidyaratnam P.S. Vaidya, 1902. Then we have seen first committee was constituted to see how Ayurveda can be implemented in the post-freedom India, and Chopra committee was formed. And we have seen the formation of the Department of Ayurveda independently under Narasimha Rao's regime. Then we have seen 2003 the creation of Ayush, acronym of Ayush in incorporating all the indigenous systems of medicine, and it culminated in formation of a ministry independent under Modi's government with the Minister of State. And we have seen 2014 and 2022 we have seen that upgradation of the ministry into under a cabinet minister and a minister of state. And we also have seen the establishment of Global Center for Traditional Medicine under WHO's collaboration with a huge resources marked for that. We have also seen that first time in the history of ministry that we have got a Ayurveda expert as a secretary, and we acknowledge the presence of Dr. Vaidya Katocha, Rajesh Katoch as the first secretary of an expert as the secretary of Ayush. This is the kind of evolution we have been seeing in this science. And if you look at the current status, and Ayurveda is curing with a novel species of excitement in this long history. It enjoys the liberal patronage of the Indian state and the recognition of the WHO and developed countries. And it is immensely popular among the people. One of the reasons for Ayurveda to be what Ayurveda today and becoming the hope of tomorrow is people want it, people need it, and people are using it. And the history of village uses of Ayurvedic traditions are very prevalent, very widespread even today. I think the growth is unprecedented. The universities in other countries are inviting people, and we have seen the herbal product industry is very fast growing with unprecedented growth rate. And we have seen it has reached into 18 billion in 2022 from 4 billion 2004. So there is a great growth that is happening in different aspects of Ayurveda, different limbs of Ayurveda, including practice, production, and services. What we see today as integrative medicine actually is not integrative medicine in its actual form. It is a journey towards integrative medicine. And integrative medicine in different parts of the world has different meaning, including the integrative medicine is considered as treating the person as a whole, take the body, psyche and spirit as one unit and getting to all aspect of the person as a holistic system. But in more prevalent definition of integrative medicine, which is being used in countries like US, is a medicine where other systems are also put into use to bring in the desired outcome of clinical practice. So the Ayurveda always, as our tradition talks, we are always open to newer and newer knowledge. We openly accept it, and we long that it should be helping us to take us to the next level of knowledge creation. So this particular rhyme from Rig Veda indicates the psyche of India's large society. So integrative medicine actually a broader paradigm of medicine than the dominant biomedical model. It comes from a growing recognition that high-tech medicine, although widely successful in areas, cannot address the growing epidemics of chronic diseases that are bankrupting the developed economies. And all health promotion and prevention are vital to creating a healthier society. In India, what we see being practiced as integrative medicine should be more precisely called summative medicine. As we know, today we have many anecdotal experience. Some of them, if time permits, I will show, is of a summative nature, where 2 systems or 3 systems come to get an outcome in a clinical situation rather than meeting each other and communicating each other, and there is a shift in the paradigms of their sciences. So this true integration will happen when they seamlessly combine to complement one another while maintaining their respective identities, philosophies, foundations, methodologies, and strengths. One of the danger that pose the traditional systems of medicine is in the name of integration, many times the foundational principles of the principal science is being lost, and it is being captured by the dominant politically and socially and economically dominant science. That should not happen as a system like Ayurveda, because if you lose that credential of Ayurveda's foundation, Ayurveda can never grow. It will get misappropriated or appropriated to mainstream medicine if you are not very intelligently deal these situations. So I'll give an example. I have been part of an effort under the guidance of Padma Vibhushan, M.S. Valiyathan and Bhushan Pattavardhan, etc., that we created a niche area showing that it is possible that theories of Ayurveda, foundational principles of Ayurveda, can be translated and can be made understood by modern science in their own paradigm, provided we give enough time and resources to do that kind of job. Probably this is one of the kinds of research we did which got published in Nature, kind of an internationally renowned journal, which made a place for Ayurveda to show that Ayurvedic principles can be understood by modern science, especially in the area of genetics. This has given rise to the Ayurgenomics kind of a concept, which has been giving birth to new and newer work in that area. I think the clinical experience, I just want to do 2 cases, how modern science can help Ayurveda kind of sciences to document properly conditions. And as you know, this condition called anaplastic astrocytoma, one of the fastest growing brain tumor, which has got no remedy, and the maximum longevity of the person once you identify and do all the possible treatments, including surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy, maximum 5 years. There are very few cases which surpasses more than 5 years of existence, which can be treated successfully with Ayurveda. I have tried to give how Ayurveda is helping and how modern medicine is helping us to document that case without any doubt. And you can see when Ayurveda started treating this condition from 2018 onwards to March 2020, we can see a marked difference in to the extent of the lesion has become zero continuously for 3 years. Even today, touch wood, that patient is roaming around the city of Bangalore without any complication, with full capacity of sin as normal as he can be. This is the marvel of Ayurveda, but which this got documented because of we got the modern technology available to us. And it also has helped me to take very, very proper decisions when these studies have been documented by modern methods. So I acknowledge that. So this is the kind of follow-up visit they did. This is the kind of treatment we did. This is the kind of decision we took based on Ayurvedic principle. And you can see that all the decisions are based on Ayurvedic diagnosis. And it helped me to take decisions based on Ayurvedic principles, but it got substantiated and documented using modern methods of documentation. Another case is also a avascular necrosis, same way. You know, avascular necrosis patients are left to no one after some time, and the only way of recovering is removal of or replacement of the bone, pelvic girdle. So this can be successfully treated, and this can be documented using Ayurvedic method of treatment, which is based on Ayurvedic principles. And you can see that we are used not a single medicine. The medicines get changed. Every stages need a different kind of preparation, different kind of medicine. So we see that if you are able to use the personalized medicine, which is part of the modern thinking process, especially in chronic metabolic disorders, this is the way to get the results of each area. So the scope of integrative medicine is tremendous. Only thing that I feel that we lack is the modern bioscientific standards of the Ayurvedic interventions remains understudied. There are no efforts to put how the mode of action is happening, how it is making. That kind of studies I had to start. To start the study, we need to have lot more and more clinical evidences to create that one. That is what we have to do. So in the current scenario, in specific disease conditions, such as degenerative or musculoskeletal diseases, Ayurveda should be the pivot of the management, with the biomedicine providing clinical support and in diagnosis, prognosis, and objective outcome measurement. Objective outcome measurement is one of the critical area for us to create the evidence creation. Similarly, in other conditions, such as acute infections or trauma or certain kind of cancers, biomedicine should lead the management approach, where Ayurveda could pitch in for improving patient quality of life situation and symptomatic relief, prevention of recurrence, and other areas. I think this is the way of balanced thinking, so that we can reach to more people and we can get the more potential. And I believe today what we see as Ayurveda is only 10% of Ayurveda. The 90% of Ayurveda waiting to be discovered by people in the field. That is the kind of work we have to initiate if you want to bring the best potential of Ayurveda. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gangadharan. You have spoken about the opportunities of integrative medicine, history of Ayush right from the beginning. You have spoken about the current status of Ayurveda, the future prospectus, particularly you highlighted the Ayush genomics and artificial intelligence, integrative medicine status as of now. Rather than using integrative medicine, you are told it is to be a summative medicine. Thank you for that. This for that approach should be converted into this and that. This approach you have highlighted. Thank you very much, sir. These are the 4 presentations in this session, and I think every presentation had a take-home message with that. To summarize the session, I invite the chairperson, Professor Tanuja Nesri, madam. Madam, please.
Namaskar. At the outset, Honorable Secretary Ministry of Ayush and also the galaxy of the experts, dignitaries in this august auditorium, it's a proud privilege and honor and it was the knowledge feast to listen to all our eminent speakers on the dais, and those who really gave us the message for the new age prospects. And it is difficult because their message was self-explanatory, but if to summarize, as we know that new age prospects, even though Ayurveda is a principal theory and applications, Vyavahar, Tattva Shastra Vyavahar, we have to develop the applications, Vyavahar, to meet the new age technology in 2047, Azadi Ka Amrit Kaal. And Dr. Sumen Singh, who is a design expert from IIT, and he gives the message that Ayurveda is not only for the products, but for the procedures also. So we have to develop the technology to meet expectations of our tradition. So for new age technology, the design experts we have to integrate with the design experts to develop tools and technology for the Ayurveda. May it be Panchakarma procedure, Kshar Sutra and many others. So we thank and congratulate Dr. Sumer. We have Bala Pesla and many other IITians from Madras, Chennai, Delhi and where the IITs and the design experts will do the justice for our tools, developing tools customized for the Ayurveda procedures and practices. Following that standard, the message what we received in this, the entire plenary session is if we have to meet the expectations of new age, the quality and the safety, and not only quality, but sustenance and continuous quality to meet these expectations of the global audience is the Q factor is the buzzword. So the standards and the quality. And that's what Dr. Rangesh Parmesh, you really mentioned with your own experience from Himalaya across the globe. You mentioned about WHO's more than 190 countries and what are the traditional medicine and the herb, what are the various standards and the regulations have to meet. And giving the example of green tea from China, and you have mentioned about how we really develop the standards for the global meat regulations, for the global regulations. Maybe that's the future of Ayurveda and future of the Indian system and across the globe. And I'm really happy to share that with London School of Hygiene, Ashwagandha is the one herb which is also promoted not only as a supplement but as a medicine, and where we have under Ministry of Ayush, All India Institute has initiated a global trial, and with Geeta Krishnan and many others supporting from Ministry and WHO, we have initiated a trial, double-blind control clinical trial, where Ashwagandha is also has meet the regulations of MHRA, and through NHS it is being conducted. So I think the future is that many of our herbs will meet the global standards as well. And that's the future of Ayurveda. So we really thank Dr. Rangesh Parmesh for giving us this perspective of meeting the regulations across the globe. And like our Prime Minister says that work local for the global. So that's the message you have given us. And Dr. Pradeep Dua from BSI followed the same message of regulation, but the standards, the Q is very important. And he mentioned about not only for the products, but for the procedure. And for each and everything what we speak about our diet, lifestyle, dinacharya, rutucharya, and for every procedure we need to have standards. And there is one agency which is looking behind for developing and closely watching the standards. And I'm sure the message of this plenary from your plenary that you really gave us wonderful map of how the standards, we meet the standards working in India, but how we meet the global standards for each and everything, not only for yoga mat, but now in IIT is also working for the e-fabric and the textiles. So maybe future we will have some Snehana, Svedana with the textile, and we will have to develop the standards, now standards for Prakriti and for our tools also. So maybe if new age Ayurveda is to be delivered, we really have to develop our own standards. It is not that apple is compared with the orange. if the conventional tool is meeting the oranges, we have to develop standard for our apple, because apple a day keeps doctor away. So thank you. And the message is that regulation, standard, quality is the keyword. And last but not the least, the message was given by the ardent propagator and follower of classical Ayurveda, Dr. Gigi. He's fondly known as Gigi Gangadharan, and he gave the perspective of what is the past, what is the present, and the future of Ayurveda. And the message with his own example of integrative oncology and many message, he gave the message, future is not only stand alone, but the future is like, the message is oneness, whole, one Ayurveda, that is a globe, it is considered as a one health, but he says that the future is integration, but it is not an integration. You gave the summation, but it is what we can say, the multidisciplinary, holistic approach, that I think everyone, best of the best from each and every pathy should come together, and the future is integration, future is summation, future is holistic, interdisciplinary. So thank you. And what we appreciate that the time management, because in the beginning we said that the success is time management. So within a short time, you gave us the global picture of past, future, present, and future of Ayurveda for the new technology. And before I conclude, when Dr. Gangadharan said that future is integration, future is holistic and complementary approach, but I am here to say that and take this opportunity to preside the session. I say that future is no medicine. Future of Ayurveda is no medicine. Why? I have a reason to say that. Because Ministry of Ayush and Food Safety Standards of India have recently come out with the regulation on food, Ayurveda Ahar, as a separate category, where whatever we eat daily, that is Ayurveda Ahar, that is nutrition, and as a Pathya, that is therapeutic diet. So our classical texts, 71 texts, they say as a Drug and Cosmetic Act, many formulations, thousands of formulations. But we have more than that, millions of recipes as well, which are mentioned as a Ahara, nutrition as a Pathya. And there is an ample of possibility for the new age prospects to develop food recipes, food supplements, medical food, therapeutic food, and may call it as a many definitions, Dr. Dua and all, in different countries. But in India, we say that Ayurveda Ahara as a classical, and to make it contemporary, we have to integrate it as an ingredient, as a food technology, as a processes, and the formulation may it be nutraceutical, because under Ayurveda FSSI there is a separate chapter 4 under nutraceutical, but now there is a separate category as a Ayurveda Ahar, where various are Manda, Peya, Yavago, and various food formulations, food formats can be integrated with the food technology. And if you consider that instead outside going your herbal tea, if you get very good Yavago, which is tasty, yummy, and in the very delicious packet, and if Uncle Chip is replaced by Ayurveda healthy snacks, which is classical yet contemporary, I think that is the future of Ayurveda. That will make us healthy and happy as well, because the message, the knowledge system of Ayurveda is knowledge of healthy and happiness. That gives us health and happiness. So the food, the products, procedure will make us healthy, but the food will make us happy. So the future of age prospect is Ayurveda Ahar along with other messages. So thank you very much, and I congratulate and thank Dr. Raj Gopal and World Ayurveda Foundation, Vigyan Bharati, for providing us this wonderful dais and wonderful audience as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, madam, for beautifully summarizing the whole session. We started with the design, we went into the international regulatory affairs, Then we went into the standards of products, and finally ended with the integrative medicine or summative medicine. This was the total session all about, and beautifully organized. Before ending the session, it's our duty to honor our speakers, and I request the chairperson to felicitate our respected speakers with a memento. Please. Director Madam, please. First, Dr. Sumer Singh. Thank you very much. Dr. Rangesh Parameshji, please. Thank you, sir. Dr. Pradeep Duaji, please. Thank you, sir. Dr. G.G. Gangadharan. Thank you very much. The session is not complete without honoring the chair of the session. I request the co-chair of Scientific Committee, Dr. Ram Manohar, please come on the dais and felicitate our chair of the session, Professor Tanuja Manoj Nesri ji.
Now it is your turn.
Thank you very much. I take this opportunity to thank my reporters, Dr. Madhavilita Dikshit and Dr. Anurag Pandey, and thanks to World Ayurveda Congress for giving this opportunity to me. Thank you.
And last but not the least, I want Madam to felicitate Dr. Rajgopal for wonderfully moderating this session, and as she said, maintaining the time as well. Okay, thank you everyone. We are starting the next session very shortly. We will just have a 5 minutes transition break, and the speakers are already here. So I request everyone to be seated. We are starting the next session immediately.
अच्छा तू कंडक्ट करते.
Audience, please be seated. The next session will be starting in 5 minutes. Please be seated. The session will continue now.
हेलो 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 हेलो
One more, Sumit is not here.
No, he is another station. He will come.
ये क्यों है कहाँ पर लगे
सर ये ऐसे खड़े होने के लिए जो शॉर्ट लोग हैं ना
अच्छा इसलिए
मेरे जैसे छोटे लोग हैं
हो गया सब. Everything is set. No problem.
ट्रीट भी सर को कलेक्ट ट्रीट किससे कराएंगे और एक बोतल पानी का बोतल चाहिए
एक
आप दोनों के लिए और दो है तो सर लोगों के लिए
सेक्रेटरी सरांचं फेलिसिटेशन मी तुला नोट पाठवते.
Fresh आहे.
प्रकाश नारायणजी असतील तर त्यांच्याकडून करूयात आपण. मी सरांना विचारते
मैडम
आणि 10:30 लेटेस्ट स्टार्ट. सर कुठे असणार
इथे पढ़ता हूँ
एक चेक करना था
पढ़ता मतलब
क्वेश्चन में जो दे हैव ऑलरेडी
पूछना है
दिनेश जी से पूछा था इधर से इट विल नॉट बी अप्रोप्रिएट टू आस्क
क्योंकि ऑडियंस को बहुत
नहीं मैम बाकी प्लीनरी में भी तो नहीं किसी से पूछ रहे हैं
नहीं इसको कल नहीं पूछा क्योंकि इनॉग्रेशन था. आज नहीं पूछा क्योंकि सेक्रेटरी सेल का सेक्रेटरी था.
टाइम नहीं लेकिन हम पूछेंगे वहाँ से इरेलीवेंट क्वेश्चन भी आ सकते हैं
नहीं तो अगर किसी को पूछना है आपको दे सकते हैं क्या मॉडरेट में भी कैसे करना है क्योंकि लोगों को पूछना रहता है. सेक्रेटरी सेल से मैं पूछूँगा.
हाँ आप पूछ सकते हैं कि
क्योंकि ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए ना कि ऐसे सेक्रेटरी सेल का सेशन चल रहा है वी हैव नॉट गिवन अपॉर्चुनिटी.
हाँ तो बट ओनली स्पेसिफिक टू दिस सेशन थी क्लियरली
सर को एक बार पूछ लेते हैं इफ इज नो तो
बट इफ वी विल आस्क
सर वहाँ पे
इफ वी विल आस्क सर विल से ओके
नहीं वी विल मॉडरेट ना. अगर कोई ठीक लगता है कि यू कैन से लाइक दे कैन हाइड इट ओवर टू मी
यस
and then Supriya and Dr. Supriya in first. If sir says yes, you can hand over the questions to her and only the pertaining
सब्जेक्ट पर्टेनिंग क्वेश्चन
हे पण सरांना विचारून करूयात आपण.
आधी सर आहे
I request all the participants to be seated. We are about to start the next session.
Hello. We are going to start the session. Please be seated. Hi. So, good morning, everyone. Okay. So, we are on the second day of World Ayurveda Congress and in the second plenary session. Now we are going to the session titled as Whole System Approach to Foster and Strengthen the Research Ecosystem for Ayush System. So, for this plenary discussion, we have esteemed panelists. I invite the panelists for this session on the dais. Honorable Secretary, Ministry of Ayush, Vaidya Rajesh Koteja ji. Dr. Arvind Chopra, Chief Rheumatologist, Pune. Dr. Kishore Kumar Ramakrishna, Professor Ayurveda from NIMHANS. Dr. Nandini Kumar, ex-Deputy Director General, ICMR. Dr. Ram Manohar, Research Director, Akara. Dr. K. Madan Gopal, Senior Consultant from Niti Aayog. All the dignitaries are invited to please come on the dais. Madam Namaste. Thank you very much.
Is live in Ayush TV YouTube channel. Ayush TV YouTube channel. So those doctors, they can share the link to their family. They can watch from in Ayush TV YouTube. They can search Ayush TV. It is in Ayush TV.
No, we will announce.
Please. Ayush TV.
Okay, we are starting with the plenary session. And before that, there is an announcement that all the sessions of World Ayurveda Congress are being live telecasted on Ayush TV YouTube channel and on Ayush TV portal. So anybody who wants to watch it from their home, they can watch these sessions. Over to you, Dr. Manohar.
Thank you, Dr. Supriya ma'am. So good morning once again. I am Dr. Manohar Gundeti. I am a research officer from CCRS Mumbai. So friends, now we are starting the plenary session. Before that, a small announcement. Please be seated. Please be seated and keep your mobiles on silent mode. And also it is requested to be seated in the hall till the program ends, so there will not be a much disturbance while the plenary session is going on. So thank you for your support. We'll go ahead. So friends, the research and development towards validation and exploring the potential of Ayush is a significant thrust area. There has been an upsurge globally towards traditional medicine system recently. However, to meet the provisions of international standards, regulations, the data on Ayush medicine, pharmaceutics, pharmacodynamics, safety is important, and to capitalize this upsurge in terms of getting market authorization for Ayush products as medicine at the global level. To achieve the same, we need a whole system, whole government approach, and for this we are gathered today to have this plenary session. So, I will just brief about the structure of this plenary session. Initially, there will be opening remarks from the experts. Later, this will be followed by question answer session. And lastly, concluding remarks by the chairperson, Honorable Secretary. To start with the opening remarks from chairperson, Secretary Ayush. Secretary Ayush Vaidya Rajesh Kotecha has over 30 years of experience in administration, higher education, scientific research and institutional governance. He is a distinguished academician and dedicated researcher committed to innovative, dynamic and well-organized work for the advancement of Ayurveda. Since 2017, he is serving as the Secretary to the Government of India, Ministry of Ayush. Throughout his tenure as a Secretary, he has been successful in maintaining the accuracy and productivity in the Ayush sector. He has received many recognitions and awards, including the Padma Shri, the 4th highest civilian award in India. As a decisive leader and a collaborative team builder, with proper planning, Secretary has brought tremendous growth in the Ayush sector in recent years, backed by research and development in the field. So with this, I request Vaidya Rajesh Kotecha, Secretary, Honorable Secretary, Ministry of Ayush, to start this session with his opening remarks. Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Manohar Gundeti, and I sincerely appreciate the participation of the experts of diverse expertise who is on the dais for this session. Dr. Chopra, we all know that he is a very eminent rheumatologist and a very hardcore researcher. We have Dr. Nandini Kumarji, former DDG ICMR, and we all know that she is one of the pillar and had a great contribution about bringing in ethics in clinical research in our country. We also have Dr. Kishore Kumar. He is a professor at NIMHANS. He is one of the rare model in our country where as an Ayurveda postgraduate and PhD is sitting as a professor in institute like NIMHANS. We also have Dr. Ram Manohar, who don't need any introduction. He is a stalwart in the area of research. And also we have Dr. K. Madan Gopal, who is coming from the policy lead policy institute for our country, that is Niti Aayog. And I am very happy to receive all my co-panelists and the colleagues for this session. The topic of today is very new. It sounds something, we have to elaborate what we are going to discuss. Whenever it was discussed in earlier sessions also, that whenever there is a discussion on requirement of research is being discussed, usually it is inferred that the research in Ayush is to be done by Ayush people and it is owned by Ayush. So this, I would use this word misconception. This misconception has contributed a lot for getting scaling up of research in our country in Ayush sector. Because of this misconception of both sides, like basic science institutions, the mainstream science institutions, actually, like all other health research, all these institutions own health research, be it DBT institutions, DST institutions, CSIR labs, or ICMR institutions. They all own the health research, different areas of health research. It could be health technology, it could be drug discovery, it could be any area of health. But when it comes to Ayush, we are limited to look at our research councils, CCRAS, CCRS, CCRH, CCRYN, and CCRUM. All we have 5 research councils of all Ayush systems, and it is limited to that. And that sometimes prohibit the scaling up, how to scale up. This is one thing, the problem statement. Another problem statement is that I know that, we have diverse experts and audiences here, like Chairman of the National Commission is here, sitting here. The stalwarts of research from private sector is here. The leaders of research, our former chairs in different countries, our directors, teachers, principals, students. So we have diverse participation of this session. And another problem statement is that when it comes to using technology for Ayush, largely we understood that it is allopathy. Like inventions in the area of radiology, inventions in the area of microbiology, all basic science, chemistry, biology or physics. Even Ayush people also believe that it is modern medicine. It is not modern medicine, it is a science, a pure science, invented by the people who is working in the pure science and developed and delivered to the health people to use it. So we have to come out from this misconception. We are all authorized to use this mainstream science, and we should use it. We should not be prohibited. I remember when I started my practice in Jaipur in 1998, several times I have encountered the patients who came and saw that I was using computer and I was using Prakriti assessment by computer and then using stethoscope and BP apparatus. And they would tell me, Vaidji, you are not supposed to use this. You take our pulse and then that's it. You don't require all those things. It is a misconception in public at large also. So we have to think about that. I would like to cite one example that, one time I got, a very abusive remarks by some eminent person, and I will not name, and they blamed that you Ayush people are doing a lot of mixopathy. So I said that, sir, what is your specialty? He said, I'm radiologist. I said, where on earth it is said that radiology is paternal right of allopathy system? Radiology is a physics. So you are basically practicing physics. And you are saying we are doing mixopathy. It is you who is doing mixopathy. This is not a populist statement. This is what I am trying to, elaborate what should be the thought process of this sector, not only Ayush, but all the science people. And that will break the silos, that will enable us to look at the possibility. Another problem statement, it is that we people, Ayush people, we believe that we don't require research. Everything is written in Charak Sanhita, Susu Sanhita. It is also not fair. We have to match with the expectation of the science, of the people, of the globe, and we have to deliver. We have to make them understand what is it, and for that, only theory of cause and principle will not work. हम कहते हैं कार्य कारण सिद्धांत में हमने देख लिया यत्र यत्र धूमः तत्र तत्र वह्नि and that's it is not enough. We have to also look at how it works. What is the mechanism? That is where basic science comes in. We know that this thing work based on cause and principle effect as a practitioner, but we don't know how it works. So I would like to cite an example that we have collaboration with Institute of Liver and Biliary Sciences in Delhi. Director of that institute is coming tonight. He will be there. We will have one expert lecture from him also, Dr. Sarin. He is a very famous physician of the country. He is Padma Bhushan. So we are working with them for mechanistic aspect of Virechana and Basti. So in Panchakarma Chikitsa, we know that Virechana works for so many clinical conditions, including degenerative neurological ailments. So just few years back, the mainstream science came to know that there is a gut-brain connection, particularly for Parkinson's and degenerative neurological disorders. So we were excited to know how Virechana works. So we started a study in collaboration with Olida Institute of Ayurveda, CCRS and ILBS. Study is still going on, but the initial results are quite exciting. What is being observed by them is that because after every Gritapan, they do the microbiome assessment on different parameters. And after Virechana also, they do this, and after Sansarjan Karma, they are doing this repeated analysis of biochemistry, blood chemistry and microbiome assessments on different parameters. And what they found is very interesting. It's just initial. That like in experimental lab, they clean the entire gut from microbiome. So after Virechana, they are seeing the same outcome into human gut after Virechana or after Basti. So that explains how these processes work on the inflammations and inflammatory markers and how they heal, how they provide different cures. So that kind of mechanistic aspects is still missing, and that needs to work. We need to work in those areas. How we were able to visualize the requirement is because discussions were going on since 70 years we are discussing. On every platform, we listen that you people need to do research. You people need to generate evidences. But then there is a mismatch. Mismatch is that what they are talking about evidence and what we understand about evidence is not at same plane. We understand evidence is in a different manner and they understand evidence is in a different manner. This is also a problem statement. Another problem statement is lack of skilling in Ayush sector that we have to accept. There is a huge expectation from the sector and there is a great mismatch of the skilling of the human resource of Ayush, particularly in the area of research. So that also need to be discussed. So the thought process was that can we think of having this National Ayush Research Consortium where all the stakeholders come together, break the silos, and then work together and deliver. What are the deliverables if they deliver? That also should be discussed. And I'm sure that this opens up a great possibility for our country, for the sector and for the globe, because a lot of unanswered questions are to be answered and there is a lot of scope in these traditional systems. And the advantage of Indian traditional systems of medicines are that they are codified science. So there is not just some practices, some knowledge system, but there is a science behind it. And we all have observed through Ayurgenomics and Prakriti or through lot of initiatives and publications. So for the students, I would like to mention that please look at this Ayush research portal being managed by CCRAS, and you can see 37,000 publications cited there, posted there in a searchable format. So please look at that. There is huge resource, and then probably it will give you and maybe motivate you to do something in this area. About COVID experience also has given us a lot of insight. Like we worked with Dr. Chopra, who was the coordinator for our Ayush CSIR large-scale multi-center trials on 4 candidates, including Ayush 64, Ashwagandha, Guduchi and Yastimadu. We had Dr. Nandini Kumarji chairing the Data Safety Management Board for all these research activities, research studies, more than 160 studies. And she was largely looking into these clinical studies and as a third party assessment, whether we are doing some gadbad or not. And she did this wonderfully. I must acknowledge and thank Dr. Nandini Kumarji for her patronage. So that kind of exercise has happened. We had worked with DBT, Department of Biotechnology, and this work actually has given us some insight how we need to work into certain candidates into drug discovery. For example, for Ayush drugs, we have a regulatory kind of advantage that we don't have to start from phase 1. We can directly go to phase 2 or phase 3 while doing the mechanistic studies parallelly, while doing the safety studies parallelly, while doing the preclinical and all in vivo, in vitro and even docking studies parallelly. That is what we did for Ayush 64. Ayush 64 is a classical example how in a very short time we can think about repurposing of any medicine or even going to the drug discovery. So for the Ayush 64, we started with multi-center trial with CSIR. We started the safety study and with the DBT, preclinical study with the DBT. We did docking study with one of the institute of ICMR, and at the same time, about the same time, all these outcome came in. So in docking study, we found that more than 31 compounds were, having protein binding efficacy with the COVID-19 virus. We found that in preclinical studies, Ayush 64 was very effective as compared to the different controls, and in clinical study, we found that it's very effective. So in about 6 months time, we were able to repurpose Ayush 64 and got it included into National Clinical Management Protocol for COVID-19. And there is another interesting outcome that once it is accepted in National Clinical Management Protocol, with the help of Seva Bharati and CCRS and other universities, we did a documentation of Ayush 64 on home isolated patients of more than 100,000 patients. And out of these 100,000 patients, 65,000 patients we were able to document for rigorous 3 weeks follow-up. In these 3 weeks, the outcome was very fantastic. It is published in Journal of Frontiers in Public Health, which is a very reputed journal. And this outcome was very interesting because it is observed that out of the 65,000 old patients who were in home isolation, only 300 required hospitalization, which is less than 0.5%. And it is during second phase, fag end of second phase, and we all knew that the rate of hospitalization was between 7 to 10% at that time. And whoever have taken Ayush 64, they require less than 0.5% of people require hospitalization. This is one outcome. The another is that nobody died. So there was no mortality out of the 65,000 patients. So those kind of science is missing in our sector. We need to work together. We need to find some mechanism. For that mechanism, recently there is a good development. This development is that Cabinet Secretary has formulated a group of secretary. If you are not aware, I would like to mention that if something new is to be done in Government of India, there is a very democratic kind of system in which the different secretaries of Government of India sit together and deliberate and come out with some proposal which is democratically discussed and proposed. So for this National Ayush Research Consortium, first I must compliment and thank Niti Aayog, that in Niti Aayog, member Niti Aayog has actually contributed and helped to visualize this National Ayush Research Consortium. And this consortium proposal was discussed at the level of Cabinet Secretariat, and now there is a group of secretary is formed with the chairmanship of Secretary Ayush. There is a Deputy Secretary, there is a DST Secretary, there is a CSR Secretary, even Commerce Secretary, DPIT Secretary and Ministry of Environment Forest Secretary is there. So the idea is that all these secretaries should sit together. We already had meetings and should sit together and visualize what to be done, what is to be done. And today's session probably will help us, me also, to visualize that what is to be done. So that is the kind of the requirement, the whole theme of this plenary, and I must compliment and thank the organizers to provide us this opportunity to discuss among this very august audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. This was the opening remark which has set a tone for this plenary discussion. Going to forward, our next panelist, Dr. Arvind Chopra. Arvind Chopra, MD DNB Fellow of American College of Rheumatology, FRCP London, is a distinguished specialist in arthritis and rheumatism and has completed 40 years of popular medicine medical practice. He is a renowned physician, scientist, and over 170 research publications in reputed medical journals, which include at least 12 drug trials. In April 2020, sir was referring, during the first COVID pandemic wave, Dr. Chopra was nominated as the National Coordinator for Ayurvedic Drug Trials under the auspices of Ayush CSIR collaboration. He continues to perform his pivotal role in a voluntary capacity. He has demonstrated several remarkable success with repurposed Ayurvedic drug. The most notable was the first time demonstration of an evidence-based superior therapeutic role of I-64 in mild and moderate COVID-19. I invite Dr. Chopra for his opening remarks on this whole system approach vis-a-vis clinical research. Please welcome.
Namaskar. I thank the organizers for this very wonderful opportunity. You honor me. It's a privilege. In the previous session, we heard about orthodox medicine, which I represent, or the modern medicine, which I represent. We heard about Ayurveda and all the traditional medicines. We heard about integrative medicine. We heard about summation medicine, which my friend Vaidya Gangadharanji very nicely explained. Now we are being, in many ways, bombarded by the requirements of the whole system approach. But Rajesh has taken it one step further, which I enjoyed so much, sir. You wrote in the press release, whole government approach. So the whole government approach, I'm sure, has adopted the whole system approach, which I think is a requirement of the time. I also want to tell you, he very nicely illustrated the Ayush 64, I would say, story. And you're very kind to describe my involvement. In June last year, my wife and myself, we suffered from COVID-19. I had no hesitation to take Ayush 64. Now, why I'm telling you this? I've been asked to speak on the kind of clinical research that I've done in the last 30, 40 years, which has influenced my modern medicine practice. Most of you sitting here do not need to be told that Ayurveda works. But yet there's a requirement to modernize Ayurveda to the modern man. 5,000 वर्ष पहले का आयुर्वेदा और 5,000 वर्ष का पहले का मानव आदमी आज से बहुत अलग रहा होगा. So even if you don't need to modernize yourself, we need some modern Ayurveda. So I think with these opening remarks, let me quickly go to, maybe there'll be enough time to give some other thoughts. Now, friends, I treat arthritis, musculoskeletal pain, and related immunological disorders, which often lead to joint damage and cause many systemic problems in the lung, heart, etc., etc. I started my medical practice as a modern medicine man. But over 30 years, my medical practice has evolved to a huge extent based on clinical observations, experience, theory-based reasoning, clinical research in community epidemiology and Ayurveda, and mostly wisdom of the age. जब बाल सफेद होते हैं ना बहुत कुछ सीखने को मिल जाता है. And I think that's very important, to be sensitive and susceptible to the change in times and the change in knowledge and wisdom. I think that's very important. From rigid, we become more flexible. We remain dynamic throughout. So in my opinion, whole system approach is easy to understand from an intuitive sense, but very difficult to describe or put it down on a drawing board and go into all the details. But briefly, what I've understood is that whole system approach means that you face the challenges of a very complex world, complex health, complex medical scenario that we live in by involving all the stakeholders, medicinal systems, environment, community. We look at all the components that go into promoting health and improving people's health and treating diseases, but the end result of a whole system approach or integrative medicine or holistic, they're not synonymous, but they all belong to the same category, should be a better outcome. An outcome which is better than the individual components. If the outcome is not better than the individual components, then why go for a wholesome approach? तो दो और दो मिलके तीन नहीं होने चाहिए, चार होंगे या पांच होंगे. That is integrative medicine. You may call it summation medicine. You may call it wholesome medicine approach. That's very important to understand. So I won't go into details of all that. Now my talk will predominantly focus on a combined approach using modern medicine and Ayurveda, but there may be some reflections of the other Ayush systems. What I want to tell you is that in my clinical practice, I have tried to apply several of the parts of a whole system approach. I don't say this was whole system approach, but over time it became holistic in many ways. And this was largely driven by patient concerns. If we listen to the patients, our practice will certainly evolve into something better and better. I think that's very, very fundamental. Now, I have worked with the community, in the community, both for medical practice and research. My working space is all in the community. I don't work in hospitals and institutions unless I get some difficult cases to refer. Now, I also must share at the outset that almost all of the clinical research that I'm about to say in the next few minutes is published in peer medical journals, and it's in the public domain and you can access it easily, but I will not go into those details. Professor Gangadharan gave me a very lovely thought. In my very first World Ayurveda Congress that, sir, you invited me, I learnt and I spoke about Sir Ramnath Chopra. He was an ex-army also, and I'm an ex-army also. I wish we were related. And as a modern medicine man, you know what he did. And though I'm a modern medicine man, but I think Ayurveda is in my genetics. So, let me begin with the community's research. It's very important, irrespective of whatever system you practice in, or what Rajesh spoke very nicely about the need to integrate. There are a lot of challenges, sir, but we must start with the community. And I was lucky after leaving the army in 1990-91, I began to work in the community along with practice. And I learned so many things from the community. We did population surveys over 1 lakh people in 17 India sites. And actually I learned the spectrum and burden of arthritis. Why do people suffer? What do people suffer? How do they alleviate themselves from these arthritis problems? And how do they cope up? And believe me, a lot was different from what textbooks teach us. And I'm sure that applies to any pathy. When you work with the people, they teach you totally a different type of medical science. In my own center, Since my beginning of practice today, we have got more than 30,000 records of 30,000 patients of rheumatoid arthritis. There's so many types of arthritis. And we have been able to capture a comprehensive capture of disease, health-related narrative, measurements, clinical status, joint functions, pain, quality of life level, etc., etc. This is required. We need to promote clinic-based medical records. And I think this is where perhaps, sir, the government can actually help in some ways. Like in the United States, when the electronic systems came, there was a push and some financial incentives that people, at least in hospital institutions, but we need community-based medical records. Because hospital records are highly biased. वहाँ तो वही जाता है ना जो वहाँ तक जा सकता है, पर आप तक सब लोग आते हैं when you are in the community. Fundamental. So I think that's very important. Now, let me just confine myself in the next few minutes to rheumatoid arthritis as a model of what we did. There are 6 to 7 million patients of rheumatoid arthritis in India as per our population estimates. We have got robust estimates. Rheumatoid arthritis, जिसको popularly कई बार आम बात कहा जाता है, but that's not actually आम बात. There are some parallels. जब गठिया कहा जाता है, is one of the most painful polyarthritis that I'm sure most of us dealt with. It's an autoimmune arthritis. It goes beyond joints. उसमें जो synovial proliferation होती है joints में, it is like cancer actually. Though it is not cancer, it destroys joints. It goes to all the systems. 20 साल पहले हमने सीखा कि rheumatoid arthritis kills people prematurely because of atherosclerosis. And 30 years back when I was doing my MD, people said, nobody dies of rheumatoid arthritis. भैया मरता कोई नहीं है. This was wrong. So there's so many changes, and I'm going to talk about rheumatoid arthritis. When I began my journey with Ayurveda, one of the first questions was, can an Ayurvedic medicine, standardized Ayurvedic medicine, क्षमा कीजिए गंगाधरन जी, क्लासिकल आयुर्वेदा के बारे में बात नहीं कर रहा, and isolated, in isolation, can an Ayurvedic medicine show efficacy? Safety सब जानते हैं, हजारों साल की safety है, कोई problem नहीं है. We need, patients want to know that the medicine is effective, and doctors who prescribe need to know. जब तक डॉक्टर्स को ये कॉन्फिडेंस नहीं आएगा वो मेडिसिन प्रिस्क्राइब नहीं करेंगे. So we also did a study in collaboration with some rheumatologists from Harvard Medical School, Mass General Hospital, and it's a wonderful trial which was initially encouraged by my dear friend Professor Bhushan Patwardhan. शायद यहाँ पे होंगे कहीं पर. Bhushan, are you there? Maybe not in this audience. So we in Pune did that study, randomized double-blind study, 14 weeks, 182 patients, excellent protocol, 4-month study. After the study was over, the Ayurvedic drug, which was a standardized combination of ashwagandha, gugul, shunti and turmeric, haldi, it did not show a statistically significant outcome in the primary efficacy of a composite index जो हमने बनाई थी, ACR. But it showed a numerical superiority to the placebo in every clinical measure. And that defies any kind of logic. So there was a hope, yes, it works. In addition to that, there was a significant improvement in hemoglobin, health, fall in rheumatoid factor titer, biological effect, reduction in the patients with joint swelling, extremely important to the clinician. After 4 months, there are 158 volunteers from that study who went on for a 3-year long-term study, which is published. In those 3-year study, patients all continued Ayurvedic drug, but we treated their flares, worsening, with short terms of modern medicine, and some we continued it. I think this is the first time demonstration in the world that first the Ayurvedic drug works in isolation, and when you combine it with modern medicines, it adds to the effect. 30% of patients that study did not require anything other than the Ayurvedic drug. The rest of them, we could tide over crisis of arthritis. We could reduce modern medicine. We reduced steroids. Sometimes we stopped steroids, and therefore we demonstrated safety was excellent. Drug interactions were not clinically visible. So both systems can work is what we got convinced. It came to my practice. Years later, with experimentation and out of a wonderful experience I got from another excellent program in 2005 called Nimitli. Some of my friends are here. I think, Kalpana, you are there. I have spotted you. So, Nimitli was a great program in 2005, New Millennium Indian Technology Leadership Initiative of the CSR, where I was asked to validate an Ayurvedic drug, and there I chose osteoarthritis knee joints. But in that experience, we learned many things from Ayurvedic colleagues. So in my initial Ayurvedic drug, I replaced haldi with amlaki now for rheumatoid arthritis. And for the last almost 15-20 years, I am using this Ayurvedic combination to maintain the remission or control of RA. In the beginning, in my clinic, we use modern medicines when the patients come with extremely painful, febrile arthritis. But as the patients get better, we are successfully able to reduce medicines, control the disease, reduce steroids. For years, they can be on the Ayurvedic medicine, and I think I've got more than now 2,500 patient records followed for 5 years. One thing I learned in the community too, which due respect to all of you, many Ayush practitioners are the first portal of call, sir, in India. But I could see that somehow, when it came to pain, whether acute or chronic, invariably modern medicines were used. वो दूसरी बात है कि 14th century में सर opium और वो सब add हो गए थे आयुर्वेदा में. But I think this is a domain which we need to work on. And I think it's very important. I've seen in clinical practice of my young Ayurvedic physicians, they need to have confidence in their system. They need to really believe in the system. Just because pain is a little problem doesn't mean that you don't stick to Ayurveda. But then these are research domains which we'll talk later on if we have time. So friends, the last thing, this is my RA story. We'll go on to another story. Several PhDs that we have done in our center under my supervision, I've learned how traditional medicines, not only classic Ayurveda, can come into practice. I'll give you some examples. We did a study for 18 months comparing patients of acute RA. All were on conventional RA medicine, but one group randomized got a structured module of counseling, diet, exercise and basic yoga. 18 months, randomized, assessor blind study. RA is a lifelong disease. You can't show efficacy in few weeks or months, just long term. At the end of 18 months, sir, the patients who got this so-called addition of non-pharmacological intervention, they had 30% improvement over and above the other group. In all measures. हम सब जानते हैं, but data दिखाओ. We need to show data. And that is another great step of integration. Diet is so important in Ayurveda. Ahar, Vyavahar, Achar, Vichar, these are fundamentals. I have learned whatever I have learned. I'm not an Ayurvedic physician. I don't practice Ayurveda. But I have tried to get the best out of Ayurveda into my practice. Let me put it like this. We did a diet survey in a PhD situation. Last survey one of my students did. We were surprised. Compared to the RDA, there was a significant number of patients of RA who were not so deficient in calories, but the quality of food was poor, and the most deficient, significant deficiency was in potassium. I was surprised because vegetarian diet is supposed to be promoted. They were doing all kinds of diets. We then did a randomized assessor blind study in patients with rheumatoid arthritis 182, comparing RA plus routine diet versus RA plus structured diet now. Pure vegetarian diet, but little rich in potassium. 4 months later, there was a statistically significant improvement in pain reduction in the patients who got a proper dietary regime. That's all, nothing else. And this study won one of the International Excellence Awards. So all these things are important. Everything in Ayurveda need not be validated. मैं ये मानता हूँ कि कई बातें जो हैं, they have to be accepted, maybe by consensus. But drug being at the core, and some things like what I've said, it would be nice if we get some controlled data on that subject. So I can go on, but I think I should now finish up and then wait for the discussion. Yes, I must dedicate this talk to my father before I became a doctor. पिताजी को बहुत अजीब तरह का गठिया था. That's not the reason I became specialist, but बड़ा अजीब तरह के जोड़ के दर्द थे. And for 30 years he treated himself. Even after became MD, सुनते थे पर मेरी बात नहीं मानते थे. माता पिताजी को सुनते हैं, अधिकतर मानते नहीं बात. Anyway, he treated his गठिया for 30 years with one tablet Combiflam every day, with a glass of milk with ghee and malai nicely added, not bothered about anything else. Every day इसको खाना ही है रात को. And he would massage his joints with mustard oil and general exercises. I think that was also integrative medicine. And years later I learned that gut is the core issue of arthritis in Ayurveda. And modern medicine also talks about gut and microbiome, which is another domain for research. And yes, I'm very liberal with use of laxatives. Every patient is asked about bowels in my practice. And I think I'm a great believer of castor oil for many reasons, and Time Churan and many other Churans. So I think my mandate was to talk on how the clinical research has influenced my practice and made it somewhat integrative, sometimes whole. So this is the kind of models that we need to develop. They have to be documented at a community stage. I think there'll be another question. So with this, I thank you all for calling me over to share my experience with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chopra sir. We are on time, but we are lacking, we are behind 5-10 minutes, but we'll catch up. So our next speaker, Dr. Kishore Kumar Ramakrishna. Dr. Kishore is MD Ayurveda and PhD Neurophysiology from NIMHANS, Bangalore. He was earlier in CCRS and he was conferred with Young Scientist Award for Clinical Research in 2018. He joined Integrative Medicine Center in NIMHANS in 2019 and later contributed immensely in the establishment of Department of Integrative Medicine at NIMHANS. He has many publications, including one in Lancet also. So I request Dr. Kishore Kumar for his experiences from NIMHANS model of integration. Thank you. Please.
Thank you for those kind words, Dr. Manohar, respected Secretary Sir and stalwarts in the field of science, especially healthcare, on the dais and off the dais. Okay, before I start, I would just like to say that the efforts, the churning that is going on, much needed, part of the hour. And I would like to share my experiences in NIMHANS. I joined in 2019. The department also began in October 2019, and then we had 2 years of COVID. So it's hardly 1 year that we have initiated certain endeavors at the center. So first thing that I realized was that the scientists or colleagues from modern system of medicine or modern science, they're very open and they actually like to work with Ayurveda system of medicine. So people from the other side are hostile was a myth. This is what I realized after I joined, because there's so many people who actually would want to work and would want to contribute. So we started off the department. So any department at NIMHANS should cater to 3 services. Basic primary is clinical service, academics and research. So we started setting in the OPD. So when we started setting in the OPD, there were different things, no patients would come and so on. So it's like when the patient comes to us, what happens? And what is the integrated model that we are talking about? So we set up the first model of its kind in the country in any institute of national importance. And that model is, everything else is the same, but that model is a psychiatrist, an Ayurveda expert, a yoga expert. We, all 3 of us, we sit together and we optimize the treatment to a patient. So 3 doctors sit together and consult the patient from all our systems. this has its own advantages, and this is what we are looking at, systemic integration. See, the problem, what happens is, whenever we are talking of integration, it goes in three phases. The first one is co-location, where you have all system of medicines existing in one roof. And there is collaboration when there is a crosstalk between the experts. And the third is integration, which is yet to be achieved. The first two phases have been achieved thanks to the efforts of the ministry and secretary sir. But the third one, how do we integrate now in terms of approach? Can we sit together and talk, and can we arrive at a consensus? What happens is the patient is going to one chamber to another chamber and another chamber and coming out, क्या मैं इसके साथ ये ले सकता हूँ, अगर ये ले सकता हूँ तो कितने दिन तक ले सकता हूँ, दोनों ले लेता हूँ तो पता नहीं क्या हो जाएगा, ओवरडोज तो नहीं हो जाएगा, इसको कंटिन्यू लेते रहूँ. So I go to आयुर्वेद डॉक्टर एंड आई से सर मैं इसके साथ ले सकता हूँ क्या, तो बोलेंगे कि ले सकते हैं. सर कुछ नहीं होगा, कैसे जानते हैं? अरे सब लोग ले रहे हैं, आप भी ले लो. You go to the allopathy doctor and say, I don't know, I will be able to say what I am giving. I cannot talk about other systems of medicine. आप ले रहे हैं, आप जिम्मेदार हैं. So the patient gets into a tizzy. He doesn't know, but he wants to. And even so we wanted to overcome this. So then a simple case vignette would be that a patient comes to us with depression, and which is mild. We start him off with yoga. And there is evidence to say that yoga in mild depression works. So he comes back to us in two scenarios. One is he's okay. Another is he's gotten worse. So we add some amount of Ayurveda medication. We have enough evidence for standalone Ayurveda treatment now for depression, mild to moderate. He goes back, comes back, two scenarios. Either he's improved or he has worsened. Maybe he's gone into severe depression or some kind of psychotic state. And that is when we withdraw both, because he will not be able to do yoga when he is psychotic. And he doesn't want to take Ayurveda medicines also. And then antipsychotics or psychotropic medications or antidepressants are started. Maybe for 2 months or so he's okay. And then he settles down. So after he comes back to us and says, sir, I want to get off these and start yoga again. And then again, these are withdrawn and this starts. So you look at the management plan for a long term, maybe 2 years or so, the responsiveness of the patient to psychotropic medicines, as well as his confidence to overcome the kind of state he is in, is much, much better. And as it improves, his resolve to overcome the disease improves. Another case vignette, we had this patient who was an intractable or refractory schizophrenia. He has been treated, when he came to us, or he was actually referred to us, and he was taking all the psychotropic medications, all the antipsychotic medicine. He was on haloperidol, he was on risperidone, he was on, in addition to clozapine. And then he was not responding at all. So then we started, we talk of, aap ise Manasamitra de dijiye, whatever. Did not respond, he is not responding to 5 antipsychotics even though he is taking. Then what we did was, we thought we'll try and put him on Shodhan. So we did all Panchakarmas, Vaman, Virechan, Basti, Nasya, except the first time it was very difficult for him. And then at the end of the first phase of all the therapies that we did, there was a kind of change in his psychopathology. There was a lot of delusional ideas. But then when he came, there was a lot of delusion, and then after this, the psychopathology pattern changed. And the psychiatrist said that, this is a remarkable thing, I have not seen something like this. Schizophrenia was there, not that he became normal, but then the patient started responding for the first time. Then we said that we have to increase sometimes he would go haywire. Then we had to supplement him something, so clozapine, the dose had to be increased. But then when we looked at the serum clozapine levels, it was much more, it was 1600, he was clozapine toxic. After Virechana, clozapine toxicity came down. Then we were able to enhance the dose also. The psychopathology changed. So what was thought to be a 15-day admission went up to 6 months. The parents said, मैंने इसे आज तक इतना स्टेबल नहीं देखा. Although he had all the, presentations of schizophrenia, he slowly started responding. It's like an evolution of practice where as you are treating, there are certain areas wherein we are sought, or there are certain areas where we can contribute. There was another case. Mainly you have patients on psychotropics, and most of them suffer from metabolic abnormality. So we took up two small studies. One study was to look at female patients suffering from psychotic disorders. So most of them they develop amenorrhea, and this is because of a lot of metabolic changes that happen. And then we started simply, we thought, let's do something. We just started them on Sukumara Kashaya. 3 months, and they started menstruating. Their metabolic issues came down. In males, we just started administering Triphala. They were on clozapine, they were on risperidone, the weight gain, which was steadily gaining, got arrested. In 3 patients, it actually came down. Then the psychiatrist started saying that if we are able to give what is the final aim? Maintain the functionality of the patient even though he is suffering from a mental disorder. So if the female patient is able to conceive or maybe lead a family life, and if the male or female, if they are able to control their diet and metabolic issues, what happens after the metabolic issues develop. That's a wonderful thing to happen. So this was an evolution that we were talking, and I wouldn't say that I can manage completely well a patient who is refractory schizophrenia with just Ayurveda medicines. No. But I am able to demonstrate some kind of response. Now we have to graduate from here. This is clinical service. Now in academics, we are looking at conceptual integration. We are trying to find out what is the kind of interface that we can develop. Maybe let's say the concept of Vata activity and also vagus. We are trying to develop a concept on that. Let's say, for example, depression. Depression, there is involvement of autonomic activity. We correlated this with Vata. We developed a Vata rating scale. And we found that the Ayurveda treatment not only improves depression, but brings down the sympathetic overdrive. And then there is a parasympathetic enhancement. So what happens is not only, what happens with tricyclic antidepressants? Tricyclic antidepressants increase the sympathetic activity, although the symptoms of depression come down. But whereas the treatment with Ayurveda, we saw that the sympathetic activity is coming down, and this is helping. You have the hypothalamo-pituitary adrenal axis, and there is also hypothalamo-cardiac axis that is controlling. So the increased cardiac morbidity in patients suffering from stress or depression is explained by this, or it is hypothesized by this. And if it is bringing down the autonomic, or if it is correcting the autonomic balance, we are looking at a scenario where not only the symptoms are coming down, but then the cardiac morbidity, vulnerability to cardiac morbidity is also being addressed. So this is where we are trying to bring in the conceptual integration, maybe for all. In the case conferences, we have the formulation, the modern scientific formula, psychiatric formulation. We have an Ayurveda formulation that happens and a yoga formulation that happens. So a student who is presenting the case vignette or case conference has to make all three kind of formulations. And then we have just started the course MD Manas Rog. We had to maintain the same nomenclature because after passing out of NIMHANS, he should not come out with a completely new degree which nobody knows of. So he will maintain the same kind of nomenclature, but he will be exposed to all these in clinical practice as well as research, including yoga, Ayurveda, and also modern psychiatry. And then later, then this is the third aspect is when we have concentrated on research. As the experts were already speaking, gut microbiome is picking up. So there are clear evidences for implication of gut microbiome related issues leading to neuroinflammation, and neuroinflammation playing a very important role in causation and also in the monitoring of course of illness in mental disorders. And then there are different genes that code for the traits. So we have just received a Center of Excellence grant from Ministry of Ayush, thanks to Secretary Sir. And we are now trying to map the neuroinflammatory markers, genomics, gut microbiome, and neuroimaging to see if we can establish some kind of a doshic brain repository. Maybe we will be conducting this study on normal individual, first degree relatives of patients of neuropsychiatry, and then also patients of neuropsychiatry. So initially we have taken 4 disorders, that is mood disorders. We have taken Alzheimer's dementia, we have taken schizophrenia and multiple sclerosis, 2 neurology and 2 psychiatry. The hypothesis revolves around these 4 pillars of 4 parameters that are implicated and see if there are any change. This is in terms of research. So my submission with this small introduction, we have just started doing things. Now, but without the help of ministry and secretary sir, we wouldn't have been able to start all this. So one thing that I would like to propose is, yes, we need to have a whole government approach, and as we are evolving, let us take the bottoms up approach, because as we are going from the basic level, we have different interactions that happen. See, I am giving this medicine, I am giving risperidone, and you say that you want to give Ayurveda medicines. So doesn't it act together and cause problems? No, this is something which the clinician comes and asks us, and this is his apprehension. This is very, very genuine. So we say, sir, there are different, the action of Ayurveda medicine is at a different level. And honestly, I don't know at what level, because I can't find out Jatamamsi levels in the serum levels. And if Jatamamsi is acting, how is it actually acting? Is it producing a cascade that is having some reflections in the neurotransmitter system of the brain? These are things we have to find out, but I have seen that if I give Jatamamsi, it's not going to corroborate the effect of risperidone and then cause problems. So this is something, and once I am clear, they are ready to send patients to us. It is only some apprehensions that we need to address. What you are doing this Shodhana, this is what we are doing. And what happens? Antidepressants have, they are known for their notorious electrolyte imbalance, hyponatremia. So we administered Virechana to a patient of depression. He was on antidepressants, SSRIs. He suddenly, after 3 to 4 Vegas, he was delirious. He had to be taken to emergency. Then they said, what did you do? So we were surprised. But he was on SSRIs, and then it was a hyponatremia. So something to watch out for. And this we will get when we are going bottoms up. When we are doing things, then this is how we are collaborating. Then Valiyathan sir came, and then he said that let's do an animal study if there are any change in the brain when the neurofibrillary tangles, on the neurofibrillary tangles that are happening with Mandukaprani or Brahmi, so that you can give a mechanism, theory of mechanism of action. So, once we developed from bottoms up approach, and then all the other departments, now we have neurochemistry coming with us, we have neuropathology coming with us, we have physiotherapy coming with us. And just last week we had neurosurgeons coming to us saying that half of our cases are completely functional low back pain. That most of them don't need surgery. Can we do something? So, they come to us, and that's how it evolves. Maybe from better than top-down approach is create an ecosystem where there is opportunity for everyone to have a crosstalk and come up. This is one submission. And second submission is we have the medical commission people who are at the helm attending here. A lot of students come to us, sir, they are deprived of skill training. It doesn't mean that अगर कोई आयुर्वेद का ग्रेजुएट बाहर आता है तो उसका रोल हो जाता है केवल चरक संहिता पढ़ो या अष्टांग हृदय पढ़ो, उसमें क्या लिखा है हमें बताओ. बायोकेमिस्ट के लिए बायोकेमिस्ट्री है, बाकी सब साइंटिस्ट्स हैं, आपकी ज़रूरत नहीं है. सो दिस इज नॉट गोइंग टू वर्क. वी हैव टू डू समथिंग वेयर आवर ग्रेजुएट्स आर ऑल्सो. एक द्रव्य गुण वाला है तो इट शुड बी अंडरस्टूड दैट ही कैन डू HPLC. If there is another person, he should be given the skill which any other graduate or is exposed to and is an expert. So maybe some kind of a system where the skill training, all the modern scientific skill training, to be given to the graduates, so that they also feel empowered, they can stand shoulder to shoulder, they can know that this is an instrument that comes out like this, they are with the on par. So these are two submissions I make. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Manohar, and thank you, Secretary Sir.
Thank you, Dr. Kishore Kumar, for this nice summing up the Niman's model, where we could see everyone that the whole system, in terms of not losing the core fundamentals of Ayurveda, coming all the system together, and in fact, the Ministry of Ayush, the Ayurveda, and the Ministry of Family Welfare, they are also coming together. So this is a nice model. I hope this will go a long way. So coming to next speaker, Dr. Nandini Kumar. Dr. Nandini Kumar, ma'am, is a ex-DDG, Deputy Director General, ICMR. She is Vice President, Forum for Ethics Review Committee in India. I request ma'am to address this gathering on ethical issues related to the whole system approach. Thank you, ma'am. Please.
So, namaskar and namaskaram. I must at the outset thank Honorable Secretary Ayush Kuteja ji for inviting me to this. You requested or hum chale aaye. Despite there were some difficulties. And I also wish to thank WAC for making it making it possible for me to come here in time to be a member of this panel, and also for the hospitality that has been offered. Before I start speaking anything, we are in India, and this gathering is very heavy about thinking of the tradition that we have inherited over centuries, the traditional systems of medicine. Now these traditional systems of medicine evolved after centuries of research into the practice guidelines. So much intelligence has gone into it that they brought these practice guidelines without the help of any lab. And today we are going back to the lab to prove things. Now I won't say Ayurveda alone, but traditional systems of medicine have been concentrating on improving health, salutogenesis, whereas modern medicine, orthodox medicine or conventional medicine, whatever you may call, biomedicine, it actually developed only maybe 200 years and odd. So it's relatively new, but it jumped to the size that we see now is only because of the usage of modern technologies, science and technology developments that have come about, which they used to their advantage. And today we cannot actually talk in the same terms that we could talk earlier because things have changed. Pollution has caused climatic changes, human behavior has changed, human composition has changed. So we cannot apply the same scale that we could use centuries ago. So we'll have to actually modify how we approach treatment issues in any system for that matter. So because of globalization also, there's a cry for evidence. If you just want to practice, your science is quite rich. Why should you actually try to prove to people? You don't have to. But then if you want to actually be at par with what is demanded by the global population, because they are in search of better treatment, because they have exhausted their own treasure of medicines for every disease. And Dr. Chopra actually had highlighted how the addition of Ayurvedic medicines could lead to some changes, better changes. So it's time now to actually come together and work together. I would actually like to say that the modern approaches and the modern medicine approaches, to go prove it in vitro and then go into vivo experiments and then only come to humans. And when we talk of traditional systems, if it is used for the same indication as described in the classical text, then you don't have to go for these things. You can straight away do human trials. And that's how, I mean, Dr. Vaidya and all that, Dr. Chopra also was part of that, talking about reverse pharmacology. In fact, Indian Council of Medical Research used that approach to carry out clinical trials in 6 areas. One of them was viral hepatitis, and I was working in that. And that actually exposed me to the beauty of combining forces. It was a multidisciplinary approach. And that's how I learned that if we come together, we can work better. And it was also, I would actually like to highlight one aspect. I mean, these people, I was working in viral hepatitis area, and these people who were coming to the hospital were actually getting treatment from outside, Vaidyas and quacks, etc., etc. So when they came to the hospital, and I was sitting with them, this is 1985, and trying to explain the rudimentary informed consent that we had evolved during that time, spending almost more than half an hour explaining to them that this will be this, this will be this, you might get the drug, you may not get the drug, etc., etc. After listening to the whole thing, and it was in capsule form, the Ayurvedic preparation was actually, what you call, spray dried and put into capsule form. So they were going to get only capsules, not paste or not any other liquid formulations. So when I explained all that, they said, will we get IV drip? No, we can't give you IV drip. Then why did we come? So you have wasted so much of time with them, and they have come with some other objective. Okay, so that sort of patient population also you will find. And Dr. I don't know who was mentioning about the feeling of pulse. I think it was Koteja ji who was telling about pulse, importance of pulse. So for a brief period, I was doing some private practice, and this person came very sick. He was running high fever. He was a Nepali. And I am trying to elicit history from him, and all that BP apparatus things and all were there. But he didn't answer anything. He just extended his hand like that. So I was wondering why he was extending the hand. Then he said, in our place, first thing the people do is feel the pulse. Now, as modern medicine people, the way we feel pulse is different from what the traditional practitioners do. So that, struck me like anything, and it's an incident that I will never forget. So that was my experience. And another thing that I want to say is the cry for evidence. When you talk about animal studies, let me just warn you that all animal studies may not extrapolate the results in humans because the structures may be different. One famous instance, which brought into light what can happen in phase 1 studies if you are not looking out for that. Now, there was a study in UK, and this was an antibody for CD28. And when it was injected into 6 people, 2 were on placebo, 6 were on this drug. It is given in low doses. Phase 1 is always like that. And then you escalate the dose. All 6 ended up in ICU because of multiple organ failure. The problem was, people were wondering what happened. Because animal studies, because you need to have the previous literature there. Animal studies showed that there was nothing problematic. The thing was done in monkeys also. Nothing was problematic there. Then finally they found that the receptor of monkeys is different from receptor of humans. So this happened. That's why you have to be very skeptic about trying to find answers in animals. And now we have technology development where you don't even require animals. You can straight away study the attachment to the receptors and get your conclusion from that. One point that I wanted to highlight was about the need for interdisciplinary collaboration. This was first tried by ICMR in the clinical trials that I was talking about, and then later extrapolated to the Golden Triangle Partnership Program, and then later the Nimitli program. These were all multidisciplinary, multi-agency efforts. The same thing should happen even now. It's not a problem. Another thing that I would like to highlight is about interprofessionalism. In fact, he was explaining about that how three people come together during consultation. The same thing can happen while trying to define what is wrong with the patient. And this is happening abroad in countries where they have both Oriental medicine as well as the modern medicine coming together. So they see how best they can treat the patient. So they see what is the ailment, whether it can be treated by modern medicine. If so, do that. And then, of course, some parts of it was described by the earlier speaker also. So you combine your forces. So there has to be actually understanding about what is this interprofessionalism. Capacity building is required a lot, and this I could see throughout all these years, and especially true when I was part of the Data Safety Monitoring Board for evaluating the research outcomes of Ayush formulations. I am just combining the term, there were different formulations, so Ayush formulations. And I could see that I am probably, Dr. Kotejaji alluded to that, but people have commented that I look like a stern headmistress. I just need a stick in my hand. Okay. The people at the other end are afraid of facing me. I felt that when I was trying to question the researchers about certain aspects of the research, a simple thing like oral consent, pandemic times, oral consent was a more feasible option. So I just asked, did you take, what type of consent did you take? We took consent because the ethics committee said that you have to take written consent, but where you cannot do it, you take oral consent. And this was lockdown time. So I said, how did you take the written consent? Because that paper can be a fomite and it can spread the disease. So I said, how did you take that? What did you do with that? So we were having PPE. We took that document. We went to their department, kept it in a cabinet, but before that we sprayed. Now I give you an exercise. You go back, take a printed paper or handwritten paper, spray on it and see what happens. So that is data management. Very important, what you do. And then I said,
published in the Cancer Journal, which has an impact factor of 508. So I request Dr. Ram Manohar, please address the gathering. Thank you.
My pranams to the dignitaries on the dais. I'm very thankful to the Secretary Ayush for this opportunity to share my thoughts on how to create a research ecosystem in Ayurveda from the whole medical system's perspective. So if you look at the whole medical system's approach, it is quite recent. It's around 2002 that this word was formally coined, and this was very much influenced by the research that began to happen on complementary and alternative systems in the West. Because when people started using these medical systems, the scientific community, regulators, they wanted to look at what are the risks for the general public, and existing research methodologies began to be applied on complementary alternative medicine, and they found that it is not possible. The existing research methods that are used in modern medicine are not suitable for complementary alternative medicines, and that's how the term whole medical systems emerged. And if you look at regulatory documents of the NIH, WHO, we can see this term whole medical system. And in the West, naturopathy, homeopathy, these are the systems that are included under whole medical systems. And other than that, from the East, we have traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda. So, one of the major problems that we see in India is that Ayurveda is a very typical example of a whole system. But in education, if we don't start at the level of education, I don't think we can bring about a change. Students should know this at the ground level of their training. The biggest paradox that I see in Ayurvedic education is that, education, research and practice are three pillars of this whole process of creating human resources. And in Ayurveda, we have a system where we teach students how to practice in one way, and we teach students how to do research in another way. And this is a big conflict. I have been interacting with PG students of many colleges, even where I am working now. And this is a big confusion that comes into in their mind at the stage of training, that they're not able to relate how they are researching with how they are actually practicing. So it is very, very important that we create a clear roadmap on how to do research and how to integrate it with practice. And actually we have to start with practice and not with research. In olden days, students were given clinical internship at the beginning of their course, not at the end of the course. Today we are still following the method of modern medicine, exposing students. Clinical training is something which is considered to be at the end of the course. Whereas in olden days, the first thing that the student does is to assist the clinician in doing its clinical work. And seeing clinical outcomes, they get the confidence. This is extremely needed. The guru waits for 6 months before the student tells him, can I also do what you are doing? There is no doubt whether Ayurveda works or does not work. Today, the student has to wait. Even in my course, we did in a Gurukula, but still, I spent about 10 years roaming around, seeing clinicians, how they are working, till I got the confidence that Ayurveda is something that really works. So this is a very big radical change that we have to bring in education. And the ideal method, our textbooks itself have mentioned it, that this whole process of pariksha of aptopadesha, what the text is saying is aptopadesha. We have to do a pariksha of that to pratyaksha and anumana. And the text says there are 3 steps. One is reporting clinical practice outcomes. Charaka says you must do tarka whenever you treat a patient. If he has got better, don't believe that it is your treatment. It could be due to something else. Unless you can establish it as it was really due to your treatment. So, vina tarkena ya siddhi, yadricha siddhi revasa. It is accidental success. Then you were asked to do further anumana, pratyaksha purvam trividham trikalam chanumete. This is nothing but the observational study design. Purvavat, sheshavat, samanyato drishta is a prospective, retrospective and cross-sectional study. So after you have enough clinical evidence, you do observational studies and then you go to the ultimate anumana, which is, paramarsha with the pakshas, paksha, sapaksha, vipaksha, which is nothing but the control design of modern medicine. You check your trial group with a positive and negative control. The positive control was called sapaksha and the negative control was called vipaksha, and then you have the paksha in between. So this model, and we don't need to do RCTs for everything. I mean, the basic evidence should come from clinical practice. You should fine tune it with observational studies, and where feasible, we have to do RCTs. In fact, the whole system approach itself came in opposition to the RCT design because of the overdoing of the RCT. We are not against RCT design. I think this should be very much understood. RCT is limited because its basic approach is unethical. If a patient cannot decide what treatment I should get, I would say that is the ultimate violation of ethics. And RCTs are based on this concept. You are asking a patient a consent to actually receive a treatment which he may not like. That is actually the consent, and this is the height of unethicalness in clinical medicine. But this is required in certain circumstances. So an RCT should not be the gold standard. It should be only used when it is really relevant. And many researchers are coming now with ideas that observational study designs can be fine-tuned and made more rigorous. So that is one thing. Now another important thing, when you say whole system, I think Ayurveda has the best definitions. Nahi jnana avayavena kritsne jnaya jnanam utpadyade. By getting knowledge of the parts, you can never understand the whole. This is a basic dictum mentioned in the classical Ayurvedic texts. So the whole is more than the sum of its parts. Another important point is variability versus averages. Today medicine is measuring health, all health metrics. Until now these variables have come. Variables are looking more at variability than our traditional methods of assessment, where BP was 120/80. It's as if it's a static figure. But our blood pressure is never stable. We are continuously adapting to the situations. How it varies in response to the environment, your mental states, that is a better metric, an indicator of health. So Ayurveda also mentioned this, Vailakshanyat shariranam asthayitva tathaivacha doshadhadu maladinam parinamam na vidyade. You cannot fix measured averages. This is a fundamental dictum that Sushruta has mentioned many thousands of years ago. So Ayurveda is focused on the science of variability. You need to measure blood pressure or any parameter over a long period of time and see what patterns they create. And those patterns are predictors also of future illnesses. Ayurveda is focused on predictive medicine also. And when you look at these patterns, you can identifying these patterns through the movement of the doshas. In fact, the dosha itself is a science of variability. How this variability happens as the body evolves. Another point, these are all coming in modern context, non-linear dynamics. In Ayurveda, doshas itself is a coexistence of opposites. You cannot measure, they follow a very fuzzy logic, creating a very dynamic balance. The Tridosha theory needs to be reinterpreted and understood in terms of, the science of variability measurement and non-linear dynamics. Then, of course, systems view. This is also a new idea that is emerging, that everything is a network. You cannot break it down into individual parts. And it's more important to look at patterns and relationships. In fact, the Ayurvedic concept of srotas, we try to identify individual structures. The srotas is actually a network. It's a network of relationships. What happens in your gut can have an impact on your brain. What happens in your alimentary tract can have an impact on your heart. This kind of understanding of network is very central to the Ayurvedic thought process. And then, of course, emergent properties. Vikriti Vishama Samavaya. That when you add things together, you get something which is always more than what is. But Ayurveda also talks of Prakriti Samavaya. So reductionism is not rejected, but it is limited to, certain context. Now, I'd like to point out that when I was in AVP, we were able to do a model in the visionary leadership of Krishna Kumar ji. Exactly this, when we did that rheumatoid arthritis study, the whole thing started with documentation of clinical outcomes. That started, in 1970s. And based on the clinical expertise, an observational study was done with the help of the WHO funding. And based on that data, an RCT was designed. And all this took about 40 years. Today we want quick solutions. In Ayurveda, why we say it is a parampara? Because it is 3,000 years old. There is research. What is done by the previous generation is continued by the next generation. That now it is the Amra study. I am not directly involved, but I think it's a great step that the ministry has done to push it to the next level, because this also is a big model. I think it's a landmark model, not just for that single study, but that continuity, from clinical practice to observational study to an RCT across generations. At least 3 generations have involved in this study. Now, there are just a few more points I wanted to highlight before I conclude. We also we can use modern medicine, like Dr. Gangadharan was mentioning how modern measurements helps to actually, because Ayurveda is inclusive. What Ayurveda offers is a new paradigm and a meta framework. I think this is very, very important. If you need to talk about whole medical systems, it's not saying Ayurveda is a whole medical system. What about modern medicine? Does it not also want to become involved in this whole medical system approach? As long as it remains reductionistic and individualistic, because the whole medical system in the future should include modern medicine also. Everything should come under one meta framework. And Ayurveda, I strongly believe, has that ability to give an initial template for how that meta framework should be. Now, in our lab in Amrita School of Ayurveda, we have tried to put a lot of modern instruments, but try to bring it within the vision of Ayurveda. Like we have a phytochemistry lab, so this is Dravya, and then we have the Sharira, which we have divided into 3. The microbiome, the cells, and the genes. So the body is enveloped by the microbiome. Inside that are the cells, and within that are the genes. And then we see how these. So this is a reinvention of the Ayurvedic concept of Rasabhediyam, where we look at the body on one side and the dosha on the other side. So even modern concepts can be reinterpreted and understood from an Ayurvedic perspective, and then only we can develop what is called as whole medical systems. So this, when you say whole medical system, it's a transdisciplinary approach. Ekam shastram adhiyano na vidyat shastra nishayam. Sushruta has mentioned that, but I would like to say Ayurveda has always been considered to be arsham, rishi proktam. Why? It is not to give a religious undertone to whole Ayurveda. It's been misunderstood. Arsham means a rishi is a polymath. He is an expert in multiple knowledge systems. He is not just a medical doctor. So Ayurveda is arsham because it brings that whole view of life. Only a rishi can create Ayurveda, not a person who is just specialized in some part of functioning of the body. And if you want to put Ayurveda again as a whole medical system, we must rediscover. There should be rishis who work on Ayurveda, who have that total vision. They are not experts only in Ayurveda, but in all disciplines and all endeavors that affect life. That is why it was called as Panchama Veda or Ayurveda, the knowledge of life, not a medical system. Because Ayurveda looks at life as a whole. Today what has happened is reductionism has happened in Ayurveda. Ayurveda has been reduced to a medical system, and reductionistic methods are being applied to Ayurveda. Now we are trying to bring one single herb or one single drug for one disease. This is reductionism in Ayurveda. So that, if that has to change, we need people like rishis who work on Ayurveda. We must open up Ayurveda to all disciplines. So many rishis of Ayurveda were not medical practitioners at all. They never practiced, but they created practitioners. They created Ayurveda and they created practitioners. And I think that is opening up today. I am very proud to say that in our school of Ayurveda, we have more funds from not the Ayush ministry, from other ministries. This is very encouraging. I got funds from DST, from Ministry of Education, from Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, and also Ministry of Ayush. But the fact that it is possible now to approach other ministries also is a very big sign. We got a project on Indian knowledge system, which is really bringing this idea of Arsham. And one of our themes is what medical knowledge is present in non-Ayurvedic Sanskrit literature. And that information will be available in a portal. We looked at Samskrita Vangmayam, all the Vaidika, Laukika Sahityas, and you take any text from any classification, you have something about health in that. India was an Arogya Samskriti. Life, we looked at how, life affects health and well-being, and also about how health and well-being, brings a new quality to our life. Today the problem is, if you are whatever discipline you are in, you don't link it with health. If you are a pilot, then you try to be a good pilot, but then you lose your health in that process. This is the biggest problem. Ayurveda said that dharmartha kama mokshanam arogyam moolam uttamam. This conflict between health and life and health, this is one thing which we have to eliminate. For that, Ayurveda has to open up. We have to bring in non-Ayurvedic people. And on this IKS platform, I was surprised to see, just like our Arogya Samskriti, which says, you take Garuda Purana, you take Lalita Sahasranama, you take even Bhagavata Purana or any text in India, there are things. Mahabharata has a lot of description about doshas. It's only the Mahabharata which says that doshas are actually gunas, not dravyas. Vayu Pittan Kapas Chedi Traya Shariraja Gunaha. You find this only in Mahabharata. How many times you must eat, what is fasting, you see only in Mahabharata. Because the knowledge of health was brought to the public by an entire, the whole knowledge system was focused on that. Today IITs are interested. There are centers on Indian knowledge systems, and I am associated with many IITs because of the IKS project. And I see this as the rediscovery of the Arsha nature of, Ayurvedic knowledge. And so the whole of India should own it. When you say whole medical system, I am reminded of the verse from Charaka Samhita. Brahmanahi yatha proktam Ayurveda prajapati jagraha nikhile nado. That word is very, very important. How did Prajapati learn Ayurveda from Brahman? Nikhilena, as a whole, not into bits and pieces. Not by understanding one bit or part of the body, you get a knowledge of whole life. It is understanding. So understanding Ayurveda is understanding life itself. And when you embrace life, you cannot reject anything. So Ayurveda is interested in engineering. Ayurveda is interested in artificial intelligence. Today we are saying, can we? It is already Ayurveda is embracing everything that life deals with. That is the holism that we require. So I think the time has come where it's not just about bringing some whole system research into Ayurveda. It's opening up Ayurveda to the whole of humanity, to bring people from other disciplines, to bring ministries outside Ayush also. And I'm very proud to see that Kotecha ji has taken great initiatives. I saw a lot of agreements with other ministries for Ayush. I think this is a great step, and I hope with all this we will have a new vision of holistic and whole Ayurveda in the future. So with these words, I'm once again concluding and thankful for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This was really wonderful and insights that has been addressed to the core issues of Ayurveda also, and taking the roots, the references from Ayurveda literature for the whole system. Thank you for this, your address. Going to the next speaker for this plenary session, Dr. K. Madan Gopal, who is a senior consultant at Niti Ayog. I request Dr. K. Madan Gopal to address on intersectoral convergence and policy issues related to the whole system.
Thank you.
respected Secretary, Ministry of Ayush, distinguished dignitaries on the dais, all the stalwarts, and the participants of this conference. First of all, I am very grateful to the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share my views on the intersectoral convergence. It's a very interesting topic. We have been talking for many decades. Name any policy and the policy is having one line which says intersectoral convergence coordination. In the morning, it's a very difficult subject. Now, why we are approaching towards the whole system approach, whole government approach. Late 90s, what has happened? Globally, this trend is there. Many of the countries, they are now shifting from the individual department, ministry-centric approach to a whole government, whole-centric approach, whole system-centric approach. It started in 90s. Now you have many countries, more than 90 countries, they are now moving in this direction. Why? Another question which we need to ask, we have been listening about many things, this pathy is good, this pathy is that. But the focus of all this thing is the beneficiary, the patient. We have to think that a system which is beneficial to the patient. Are we able to provide benefit to the patient or not? That's the prime question which we need to ask rather than saying that okay, which system works better or not. I am not interested. I am a public health practitioner working with the masses, with the community. And whatever helps the community, I am interested in that, not in the pathis and other things. We have to focus on that. One more important thing which when our Honorable Prime Minister during his first term, when he first came to Delhi, he was very surprised to see many governments working in the capital. All the departments were working in silos, as the Secretary Sir has mentioned about the silos. We are all working in silos. Even as a practitioners, we are working in silos. If you take any, COVID is a good example, how the whole government approach can yield good results. That was a very perfect example in the country, how a whole government has worked and yielded a result, and our model of implementation has been appreciated globally as well. But can we create that kind of mechanism in the research sphere, in the day-to-day administration? One example which Secretary Sir has pointed out, the coordination mechanism which has been created now by the secretaries. Is it going to help? In the research also, in the Ayush research, we are having 7 councils. And they are having their own regulatory mechanism, own mechanisms. Even in institutions, we are doing all the research. In institution level also, we don't know which department is doing, which scientist is doing, which vertical, which work is happening. And we don't talk to each other. You see how the Cochrane network in the research field has evolved. But that is just a small iceberg, tip of the iceberg. But during the COVID time, you see, when we were talking about the data, we were struggling to get data. But everybody was sitting with the data which they have generated with the public money. They were not sharing the data. Are we looking at this kind of system? And who is the beneficiary? Nobody bothers about the beneficiary. For them, the beneficiary is just a number. Another number, either that, either cured, either I have treated so many numbers. When this number will become an actual individual, that's a challenge. There is no question that the modern medicine 200 years back, it started with germ theory, then hygiene and other practices, then it has taken whole of the world. We have to understand that how this mechanism has happened. And why, despite so much efforts, why other systems are not able to catch up. If we are able to find answer to this, then we will have the answer. Because people will accept only thing which is beneficial to them, not what we think is good for them. What is happening in the sitting right from coming from the community, working at the policy level, what I am seeing that there is a disconnect. All the things, strategies are driven from the top. Very less intersectoral convergence, vertical silos, horizontal silos. Even in the horizontal institutions, we are having silos in the departments. In the department also, there are silos among the professionals. First, we have to see that how we address this thing. We can create mechanisms around that. Apart from that, if you look at the health system, I just talk about the health system in the countries. How many institutions we are having, including the Ayush and the other institutions, more than 1 lakh institutions. And if you look at the out-of-pocket expenses, I'm just giving some data points, out-of-pocket expenses. We have been talking about universal health coverage. That means each and every individual, they need to be provided some financial protection against health-related events. Either they are buying Ayush medicines or any medicines that should not be affecting his pocket. मोटा इसको समझने के लिए यही है कि out of pocket expenses which used to be 72%, with efforts we have been brought to 48%, but WHO standard says if the person is spending more than 25% on the medical expenses, whether it's any medical expenses, then it's a catastrophic expenses to him. That means the person is liable to fall into poverty. Are we able to contribute to that? That's the question we need to ask. It's not a question of what we are doing. Then the next thing is we have to strengthen the confidence of the data flow, as I mentioned. At NITI, what we did, we have tried to bring in the data because data is crucial for things. So national data analytic platform is there, but still lot of work to be done. The data, research data which is collected, even in the institution level, right up to ICMR level, the other research councils, are we able to share data? So that when we are investing into resources, are there any deduplication of the resources? If I have done some study, that should be of certain quality, acceptability, so that the other persons, he can take clue from that thing and he will venture into answering some other questions. So that kind of thing we have to say. Why we are doing this whole system approach is so that a greater outcome can be achieved. One of the things is greater outcome. How greater outcome can be achieved? That we have seen during the COVID times. Coordination happened at the apex level, then we had the empowered committees, and this empowered committee, they helped the country in streamlining with the limited resources how a better outcome can be achieved. That example is there. We can see that how during the peace time we can take these opportunities and see that how it can be implemented. Then we can streamline activities with this one system approach. Many examples are there. Dr. Chopra sir has pointed out, and the other people, they have also pointed out how a better approach can result in streamlining activities. So that the ultimate aim is to provide relief to the patient, and that kind of things can happen when we are able to streamline activities. Then we can have a better policy integration. Then apart from that, if we are having a whole system approach, we can have streamline the national development as well. We do have policy enablement in the form of national health policy, which talked about medical pluralism. That means it has not restricted themselves. It is a patient-centric policy, wherein the whole objective is to NITI, we have trying to build a framework for how this medical tourism can happen. The work is in progress in that direction. It is at the very highest level, discussions are going on. How an integrated health policy can happen, how a framework is created so that the whole system and the whole government approach can happen for extending services to the beneficiary. But many of the systems are driven by external opinion, that is the public opinion, the budget constraints, the security of the country, then counter-terrorism and environmental impacts. They are all driving how a whole system approach needs to be put into place. Then there are other internal issues which will at least streamline the whole system approach. One is the common interest. Now we are all here. That's the common interest which we have been creating. we all want to deduplicate things because the resources are limited. If you look at the spending in the health, are we able to, because many of the things are duplicate, means I am doing the same thing, the other person is also doing the thing. How we can deduplicate that thing, which can result in reducing the cost. And we can think of increasing productivity and achieving coherent high-level actions. That's the thing which we can have. Then another thing is what we can do, because in SDG 17 we have talked about creating a coordinating structure. If we can create a coordinating structure, examples are there, work is in progress, we can always do that. One or two examples which you can see in the SDG goals, when this problem was cited, it was thought that we should be focusing on districts. When the focus was shifted to, we have identified around 127 districts, 112 districts, we are implementing one program which is called as Aspirational District Program. It's an approach where how integration can happen. We have been talking about intersectoral coordination, collaboration and integration, and this is an example how in the government sector integration can happen towards a common objective and goal. That means improving the status of that district so that the district aspire to be sitting with the normal districts. That is a program. And the construct is there. Here the converging point is the district magistrate. And they are trying to see that how the status of the village improves. Examples are there. When we talk about the health, you are having, for the sake of intersectoral convergence, we were only having a monthly meeting. But nothing goes beyond that. Because all the things are to be executed at the lower level, and we have to see that how that kind of coordination happens. Because all the strategies, I'm repeating again, strategies happened and been directed at the highest level based on external, internal factors. But the execution has to happen at the lower level, wherein the intersectoral convergence has to play a major role. Examples are there. Things are moving in the right direction. We talk about the medical pluralism. We are trying to create a framework, see that how far it can happen. Second thing, national research consortiums are also been, you see the duplication happen. The Department of Science and Technology or the PSA's office, they are also trying to have a national research consortium. Ministry of Ayush is also having a consortium, and ICMR is also there. ICMR was having a mandate to do Ayush research as well. But it was just small line, that's why they have not taken. That's why there is a need for having this. But ultimately, we have to see that how in the interest of the beneficiary, we all come together and focus that how all these systems can work together in a common interest of elevating the pain and suffering of that beneficiary. I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Madan Gopal, on this insight on the policy issues. Now we are going forward for the discussion and question answer session. I'll invite my colleague Dr. Shobhit Kumar to please come ahead for the question answer session. Please.
Thank you, sir. Namaskar to all dignitaries and one and all. So a deep gratitude to all our panelists for sharing their insight and experiences in this important whole system approach area which we are discussing today, and why it is important. As we discussed, we are having policy mandate for integration of Ayurveda and Ayush in mainstream healthcare system, but for seamless integration of Ayush and Ayurveda in mainstream public health care system and to improve clinical practices, we require support from the all stakeholder departments, ministries, and we need to create evidence in Ayush system to foster an ecosystem in Ayush research and to enable mainstreaming of Ayush, as well as to enable global acceptance and strengthen global acceptance of Ayush system. So with the permission of chair, we take this session forward by taking a view of panelists on a few questions. Sir, with your permission, we one or two we will take and then we can go, sir. So as we are discussing about whole system approach, so we would like to know what are the advantages of this whole system approach and what are the opportunities lies in this area. So anyone from the panel can answer.
Yeah, I think the biggest opportunity, we have a great opportunity because India to take leadership in this field of whole systems research, because we have this rich tradition of, Ayush systems which are in practice. In other countries, there is only research. The practice is not so fully well established. This is where I think we are lacking, because all these new ideas of whole system research, all alternative research designs, they are all coming from the West, where traditional medicine is still not so well established. So I think we should take a leadership and initiative to show to the world how whole system research can actually be done. Because here in India, we can practice much more freely than any other part of the world. Every system, any practice can actually be made available to the people. And we can also show, because this is one major thing I like to highlight, that we can show how whole system works in actual practice, not just in research settings. That is possible only in India today. And we should not lose that opportunity. Thank you.
With the permission of chair and due to the paucity of time, we will not be taking much questions, but one or two questions from the audience. If they have, Dr. Shobit is here, the mic is with him. Please raise your hands for any question within the audience for the chairpersons here, chairperson and the other experts here. Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm very happy to know that there is a National Ayush Research Consortium is being formed. As an active researcher in the field for last 25 years, I just want to share you some of the experiences, and I hope that through NARC, these issues might get addressed. So whenever we send any proposal, research proposal to any ministry, Dr. Ram Manohar is lucky, I would say, but to DST, DBT, or in that case even to ICMR, they get immediately rejected, without even going through the scrutiny, and only one line is written that this comes under Ministry of Ayush and please forward your proposals to Ministry. So, sir, if this issue gets addressed through this NARC, we all would be really grateful to you. And we hope that the solution for this issue will come through NARC.
Okay. This is well taken. Coming to, due to the paucity of time, there are many questions amongst you and for us also, but there is a lack of time. Other sessions has to happen. So I will request the chairperson of this session, Secretary Ayush, to conclude with his remarks for this plenary session.
One more thing which I want to add is that once we are talking about the whole system approach, at the government level we can think of providing additional funds. So for any of the program projects which are focusing on moving through this whole system approach. Otherwise, it will not work.
Okay. Secretary Ayush. I request the chairperson, Secretary Ayush, to please conclude the session with his remarks.
Thank you all the distinguished speakers. You may have seen there's a lot of food for thoughts from diverse specializations, right from the expert at the level of ethics, who is the stalwart in the area of ethics and standards, or from the whole system approach, or from the perspective of Niti Aayog, the policy. We can see is expertise of clinical research, expertise of integrative practices and research. So for all of us, including me, we had a lot of learning for this session. And usually what happens that when we have such discussions, it ends up right there in the hall, and then when we go out, we just forget about that. So we want to ensure that it do not happen. For that, I have some request to the even audience, that I will request our session coordinator, Dr. Gundeti, to share an email address. So if you have any suggestion, you please send us. What we are thinking that based on these discussions, we would like to create a policy paper for such kind of ecosystem. So that could be an outcome of 9th week, this plenary session of National Consortium Research. So that's very serious thing, and we would like to make sure and then convey that, please contribute. When we talk about these different thought processes, I would like to summarize some of the important key takeaways. For example, Dr. Chopra mentioned about the importance of mainstreaming clinical records, and he mentioned that 30,000 patients total clinical record is maintained in his practice of all rheumatoid arthritis patients, which is huge. So for the information to all of us, Ministry of Ayush is working on this Ayush Grid projects in where we are trying to visualize creating an IT solutions and ecosystem for everything related to Ayush. It could be regulation, education, practice or research. And recently we have launched, after a pilot of more than 50 million patients, the solution is AHMIS, Ayush based hospital management information system, which is also having the functionality of outcome based reporting. Is not only demographic data, and it is also aligned with ABDM. ABDM is Ayushman Bharat, the digital mission of the Government of India. So it will have this alignment with this digital health ID of our citizens. So that is happening, and I am sure that the practitioners and researchers will get benefited out of it. And we are trying to get it actually aligned with this ICD-11 Chapter 2 morbidity records of Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani morbidity codes. So we will be able to create a big ecosystem of documentation, commerce, insurance, and so on into this platform. So big data is one of the key takeaway. He also mentioned about the standards, requirement of standards, and that is in the morning session Dr. Duva has a very good talk about the ISO standards of products and services. So that is also aligned, and there is some work is going on. I am very happy to know, and you expressly mentioned about the pain medicine, lack of pain medicine in Ayurveda and Ayush sciences, which is true. And we immediately our mind goes to the Vijaya preparations, and then we have to make sure that we should restrict ourselves by this, taken away from this, too much of marketing from the rest of the world about cannabinoids and all those things. We have to make sure that our country, particularly per se India, should not become an immediate world capital of opioid dependency like other countries do. So we have to make balance out of it, and we have to find some solution. Potassium deficiency is one of the key takeaway. Diet, lifestyle and yoga, non-pharmacological intervention has a role. we had a lot of discussion with Rajiv Vasudevanji, he is sitting here. And Rajiv Vasudevanji is a firm believer and he has established a lot of such benchmarks of Ahara, Vihara and Chikitsa for any disease. And he has made a lot of standardizations and lot of documentation of integrative practice based on Ahara, Vihara and Chikitsa. So Ahara, Vihara, Chikitsa also comes into Aushadha and Chikitsa, therapeutics like intervention. So there is a lot of potential. So we should not, when we talk about research, we should not just limit ourselves to drug research. There is a lot of more. Nieman's model is one of the best model where they have showcased the integrative practices, sitting together and discussed about patient. I think that model is very effective at tertiary care level because that can be done. But at primary secondary care, maybe we should require different models. It could be cafeteria approach, standalone clinics, and then at tertiary care level there should be a model where everybody should talk to each other and there should be an approach which being practiced in Nieman's. But I am happy to make this very good information available to all of the audience that based on this model's success recently there is a mechanism of a continuous communication between Ministry of Health and Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. And with this, there is a recent decision which has been taken is to create Department of Integrative Medicine in all new aims. So there's a very big outcome based on the Nieman's model. Nieman's model is also talking about, they have created the ecosystem of MD Manas Rog and PhD in Integrative Medicine. So the education regulators are sitting here. So I would request that please create employment opportunities for them. If they create the human resource, best human resource on the earth, and you say they are not trained in our Ayurvedic colleges, they are not entitled to become teacher, then it is a big prohibition. So we have to make sure that we have to create an employment opportunity for them so that there is a dynamic evolution of HR is possible. Then also Dr. Nandini Kumarji has actually, she was very crisp in her messaging. Like for example, she was mentioning about the possibilities of reverse pharmacology and network pharmacology as against the molecule approach of the drug research in modern medicine or new dosage form or animal extrapolate in humans. We have to make balances. And also she has used this word interprofessionalism and they gave some example, very interesting. For me it was a great learning. She also laughed at her own self that she said, I was considered as a strong headmistress, in sitting in the DSMB, but we all really, madam, appreciate. Because of you, we came out with lot of good publications because you made sure that there is no compromise into the documentation and then following the protocol of the research. That is very much required. And when we talk about the protocol design, for all of us, learning is that it should not be sitting two people and creating protocol. Protocol should be designed, reviewed, published, and then if we conduct that particular research study, then it has a lot of authenticity because it is reviewed at multiple levels, and then it makes a lot of sense for a good publication and good outcome and good translation also as well. She also mentioned about need of capacity building and then gave some examples of research methodology course, GCT methodology course and TOT, training of trainers. My request to educators and regulators, please look at these possibilities of making these compulsory for the BMS and postgraduate courses. All these trainings should be compulsory to them so that they align with the mainstream sciences and they are sensitized. Then also she mentioned about the importance of documentation and research methodology ethics. Those are all takeaways from her speech. Then Dr. Ram Manohar spoke at length about the relationship of Ayurvedic principles and whole system approach. Whole system approach is very important to understand, and then there is a great learning from Dr. I'm a great fan of Dr. Ram Manohar, I must say that. And so he mentioned about to bring change in education and alignment of requirement is the education, practice and research. So when we talk about the making people practitioner, there is a different thing we teach to them, And then when we talk about research, we do different. So we have to align that. That is that's one of the important message he also mentioned about clear roadmap. Then Pariksha, Aptopadesha and its translation to the Pratyaksha and with Tarka, and it was also, a very good understanding through this prospective, retrospective and observation studies, and then going to the RCTs if required. So it's a generations of work. It's not there is no shortcut that we understand. He put some examples like Dr. Chopra ji also mentioned. Then whole system approach versus RCT. He discussed it at length. And we all know that both of these things are required, but then we have to make sure that, both of these things are available wherever it is needed, wherever it is required. So it is not that this or that. It could be this and that. That is the learning. Then coexistence of variability. That is also, that is not available in the modern sciences, but variability measurement should be required, and that is all what he said. Also, AMRA study he mentioned, and this AMRA study is one of the example. He was the pioneer with the help of NIH grant. The study was published in Journal of Rheumatology. Now this is being taken forward with multi-center trial with the help of CCRS and AVP and All India Institute of Ayurveda and ITRA Jamnagar. So it's a very big study which is happening. Then also Ayurveda concepts in labs. That is also a new thing that they are implementing, and his inference is very important. They are getting grants from BST, getting grant from even Information Technology Department or even Culture, Ministry of Culture for Indian Knowledge System. So those are great things for all of us to look at that. And then enthusiasm in IITs through IKS. So there are a lot of enthusiasm. We have to capitalize this. Opening to Ayurveda to other streams is not just, Ayurveda is related to Ayurveda, but engineering or biology or chemistry. Dr. Madan Gopal ji actually, spoke at a length about the policy perspective. He is from Niti Aayog. He is if patient wants something, then you come together. But if without patient's consent or patient's requirement, you cannot just top down doing something. So we have to look at. I would like to cite this interesting study what Ministry of Ayush did during the COVID. This impact assessment I was mentioning speech into the inauguration. That this impact assessment study was a good example where we found that 89.9% Indian population is actually, they have used Ayush. So it shows a great undercurrent, there is a great undercurrent, great demand, and then that demand should be catered with good standard, good research. Skilled practitioners, that is the inference. He also mentioned about the COVID example, and then silos, even in, it is true that in institutes also, we are representing different institutes. In our institute, of Sharir Kriya, they don't talk with Shalya Chikitsa, or Shalya Chikitsa head do not talk with the I was studying in Jamnagar, I saw this, that, the Kai Chikes and Shalya never talked to each other because they looked at each other as a competitor. So that is also a takeaway, that we should have good sharing of data and to save resources. That is the message. And then policy enablement in line with the national policies, like National Policy 2017. So policy in NHP 2017, it is mentioned that mainstreaming of Ayush is required in public health. So what we are doing, what we should do for mainstreaming practices should be enabled. So what should be done for integrative practices? Those are the mandates in the policy paper contents. And then he also lastly mentioned that there should be provision of some Supriya mentioned, actually it's a sore point what she mentioned, that whatever going to different institutions, usually it is rejected. It says that it is Ayush, good example of working in silos. Why this is being taken up, this research consortium, is also sensitization of these institutions and their leaders, that we all should own the research. Ayush people are largely practitioners. So that is also one of the important takeaway. If I want to make things into a structured, take one more minute, that when we talk about the research thing in Ayush sector, Ayurveda sector, we need to look at operation of research ideas and skilling of the human resource. This is one important thing. Another thing is that alignment of service, public health, and third is actual research in which area, whole system or what, or maybe so many different models. Then talk about One Health, and One Health is not just human health. One Health is health of the universe, health of the Prakriti, health of the plants and human being. So in alignment with this One Health, we have to expand our horizons of the thoughts, that process. And then maybe we need to develop whatever is available, maybe inventory of available outcome is that whenever we talk about something new, usually what we listen to is that let's do a pilot, and then after pilot we'll think about that, and then inventory, then we find that, oh, such similar exercises has been done several times. So if we do an inventory during this process, that could save a lot of energy and resources. As is the senior advisor of NITI. This inventorization, good documentation, then the requirement, then about the models of practice-based research, or models of research in the different practices, not only drug. And last is drug development. So drug development has a very simple thing that I would like to mention, that in 75 years of our independence, hundreds of leads to the rest of the world, hundreds of the leads to several good extent, but we were actually not able to develop in our country. All of the drugs what we are using is coming from the outside. That is a bitter truth. This research consortium, if we think about we have good leads, so many, decide at once that in next 5 years we'll come out with one botanical from Ayurveda. In next 10 years we come out with 5 botanical, and it is possible through this total approach by one of the interesting, and at the end all of these things should be covered into a policy paper. So we are willing to create a policy paper. I will suggest the rapporteur and the convener of this session to look at that possibility, and I will tell him to share an email address so that we listen to all these stalwarts sitting in the dais. And thank you so much for careful listening. It is 2 hours and 15 minutes, which is long. Our capacity is usually 1 hour, 1.5 hours. Then more than that, everything goes from the top. But still you sat here and then you were listening to all of us. Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This is concluding remark and future roadmap and the action points. We'll comply for that. With this, we are concluding the session, but before that, we'll felicitate the experts on the dais. I request Secretary Sir to felicitate the experts, Dr. Arvind Chopra. Dr. Nandini Kumar ma'am, Dr. Ram Manohar, Dr. Kishore Kumar, and lastly Dr. K. Madan Gopal. Thank you. Vote of. Also, I request, sir, I request Supriya ma'am to please come on the dais.
And before we conclude, sir, this was extremely enlightening session, and thank you for asking us and giving us opportunity to coordinate this session and arrange this session. Before we conclude, I request Dr. Jaiprakash Narayanji, Trustee World Ayurveda Foundation, to felicitate our chairperson, Honorable Secretary, sir. Jaiprakash ji, sir, we want you to do one small favor. We want you to felicitate Dr. Shobhit Kumar also, who has done lot of efforts to make this session successful. Dr. Shobhit Kumar. Yes, Dr. Shobhit is working at Niti Aayog. He's an Ayurvedic person working with Niti Aayog. Thank you, and Dr. Manohar will give formal vote of thanks.
Nice. Nice. Sir, thank you. I'm standing for the vote of thanks here. At the outset, I am extremely thankful to all the speakers here on the dais for taking their time from their busy schedule and to come travel across their places and coming here and guiding us with their presence. Thankful to everyone, including Secretary Sir. I'm thankful to the World Ayurveda Congress Secretariat, the whole team, and especially Dr. Supriya ma'am for organizing and making this happen, this very unique session. And lastly, the logistic persons, my colleagues, reporters, and Dr. Shobhit and Dr. Sumit. Thank you, all this team. And lastly, very special thanks to the Secretary Ayush, who has given opportunity for me to moderate this session. And this is a very unique session from the side of Ministry of Ayush and CCRS. Thank you everyone. And sorry, and lastly, I am sharing my email ID to please share your any suggestions, comments, and feedback on this particular session. My email ID is drmanohorccras@gmail.com. We look forward for your comments and suggestions on this particular session. Thank you. And lastly, I conclude this session with one quote from Henry Ford. He says that coming together is a beginning, coming together is a progress, and working together is a success. So let's work together and look ahead for the success. Thank you everyone, and the whole system and the whole hall. We are thankful to everyone. Thank you.
ठीक है
Srikam.